Nope.
Just doing
Nobody
it.
curse because we have about 12 seconds left.
Okay,
well,
it's like best behavior for the next 30 seconds or so before we get past the minimum. Then we can go at it.
Oh, fuck, we're live. Okay.
Oh, son of a bitch.
God damn it.
I'll edit it out later.
All right. Edit it out before the re-up, at least, I guess,
Yeah.
on the second channel. We good. Hey, everybody. Welcome to BSUP number 41. We're fifth week in a row. We're actually doing it. Let's see if we can make it 6 and 7 and 8 and keep it going.
It's BSUP 42.
42.
Yeah.
BSUP 42.
You almost had a smooth start there. God damn.
A fact check on the number, please. Okay. 42 it is.
Damn it.
So,
I am your co-host, the movie cynic, of course. Little Platoon is the main host on the main channel here, and we got Dark Hour to my camera right, and our very special guests, the Critical Drinker. Hello, sir.
Hello. Good to be
Hello.
here.
Yes, thanks for coming, man. And Echo Chamberlain as well, dressing very dapper today. How you
Hey,
doing?
lads. Always got to remind myself how much fun it is and how cool it is to be with you guys. I mean, look at this panel. That's a great panel right there.
It's a hell of a panel.
and me.
Are we starting out with a super chat? TGV Monster for $2. Hi, everyone. And I mean everyone.
Everyone.
I love how it's a running gag because he forgot me the first time.
You're already part of the lore there, Dark Hour, BSUP lore. But we got well, it's kind of a quiet week in popular culture. So we got a lot of topics on the docket. We don't necessarily have to get through them all, but we'll see where we go. But
Those
what's
two sentences
first?
don't normally go together. It's a quiet week, and we've got a load of topics.
I know, but they're all just little baby ones. They're just like there's
small
not like a
topics,
big.
minor topics.
They're
There's
not.
not
sent me
a
out-
big
he sent me out with
pair
a-
of balls that you can grasp for a topic this week.
He
We
sent me
just
to
grabbed
comb,
all kinds of little things and
he
make a
sent me to
show out
comb
of
the
it.
desert, so I'm combing it.
We ain't found shit.
Well, I know one thing we are going to talk about though. I assume it's first on the slide list, is it not, Dark Hour?
Yes. Do you want me to handle the slides, or would you like to handle the slides?
Why don't you handle the slides, sir?
This about sums up the whole show. So.
Yeah. Yuck.
Oh, poor Celebrimbor.
I call him Cuckabrimbor. You
That's
can take
fair.
that as you like.
I still like the one someone in chat came up with a couple of weeks ago. I think was Mrs. Doubtshire, and I really like that one. So I'm gonna keep
Yeah.
going with that.
That's a good one. But,
Middle Earth, stupidest dude.
He is an absolute mark, isn't he? For an elf that's thousands of years old, you'd think he'd have a bit more wherewithal about him, but apparently not.
No, he takes the childhood gaslighting, like the playground level gaslighting, pretty horribly here.
Yeah, for a race that's supposed to be thousands of years old, and you'd assume would accrue, dignity and gravitas and a kind of equanimity. And these guys are stupid, and Galadriel and Elrond bicker like an old married couple and make stupid, impulsive decisions and are really kind of passive aggressive. So you wouldn't imagine these people are thousands of years old.
Also, as well, it still annoys me that there are old elves. They shouldn't look old because they don't age. They get to the point of maturity, I guess, where they've stopped growing, they've stopped advancing as such, and they just remain like that. They're kind of pristine for the rest of their lives, and the only way they die is just by being killed in battle. That's pretty much it. So you shouldn't see elves that look like they're in their 50s or 60s, like this chap here, which just kind of annoys me right off the bat. They should have an ageless quality about them. This guy looks old.
Yeah, that always bothered me in the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings trilogy also, to be honest.
Well, I think that they grow a bit. I mean, there's the reason elves are not born into the world and then remain as babies in perpetuity. There is, in theory, there is a concept of elven puberty that they have to go through. And they sort of grow up to a point and then stop. I don't necessarily mind too much that Celebrimbor looks a bit older than other people. The problem is the show doesn't really understand how it works itself. Like, two elves who are supposed canonically to be basically the same age, one of them might be portrayed as an old man because the show wants him to seem wise, and the other one will be portrayed as a much younger person because the show wants them to seem younger and inexperienced, but actually they've been around for the same amount of time. They should have had the same amount of life experience, and there's no real explanation either for the difference in look or particularly the difference in outlook, personality, knowledge, maturity, all the rest of that. Because, like, you're right, none of these people behave as though they've been around for thousands of years. It's like fucking Celebrimbor in particular is the most easily manipulable bastard on the planet. Just appeal to his childish 14-year-old ego and you're done.
Yep.
Sums up the whole show right there.
I mean,
Essentially
Elrond
with
in the
the-
original trilogy, right? You know, Hugo Weaving, he gave the sense of being ancient, which is an incredibly difficult thing for an actor to undertake. But he could do it. He had the sense of that. He'd seen everything go around so many times and was kind of inured to it, and that gave him his kind of charm as a character. And it also made it quite powerful when he would show tiny little flickers of emotion. For me, in the original, well, in the Peter Jackson films, I think the most powerful moment is when he finally says to his daughter, you know, do I not also have your love? It's a really sentimental and powerful moment because it's that one little flash of genuine emotion he has.
Yeah.
But these guys are just kind of emotionally incontinent, which seems weird for, you know, beings that have been around for millennia.
Yeah. And I think as well, like, I know this is kind of unavoidable because of the nature of the show and the story that it's telling, but I think Lord of the Rings, the Peter Jackson trilogy, worked so well because the elves were used very sparingly. Because they are these ethereal beings that have an almost otherworldly aura about them. And so when you do see them, they're usually in this almost like a magical bubble. You know, when they go to Lothlorien, when they meet Galadriel, when they go to Elrond's house at Rivendell, you know, it's all very, like, there's a lot of slow motion shots. It's all very tranquil and very ethereal. And that's great, because it fits with the character of what the elves are. They're almost incomprehensible to us mere mortals. But then when you see them here, you have to spend so much time with them and they become mundane. I mean, it's not helped by they're played by mundane actors giving mundane performances, and they look not a bit like elves. Like, you can't just stick point years on an actor and make them be an elf. But yeah, all of that stuff combines together to create this feeling that the elves are no longer special in any way. They're just humans with pointy ears. They're just as frail and just as susceptible to all of our failings as we are, and that's not what they should. That's not how they should be portrayed.
This one.
And it's tricky as well because they struggle then to draw any kind of contrast with other races. There's exactly one scene that I remember quite liking in season 1, I think it is, which is after Elrond tries to get the Mithril. And King Durin says, no, you can't have it, basically. And so Elrond and Durin, the younger, the son, have their first conversation after seemingly all hope has been dashed. And, you know, Elrond says, well, this is kind of it, you know, we're going to have to go back to Valinor at this point. And Durin, even though, you know, he's the hardy dwarf and the person you'd least expect, I think, to be as sentimental about it, is the one who's sort of on the verge of tears. And Elrond is the one who's quite stoic and even optimistic about it. And I think that's the only time I remember the show making any kind of use of the massive difference, like the wildly like different life views of an elf and a dwarf. Because for Durin, that is the end. Because, you know, he's a dwarf, he doesn't live forever. He's not going to Valinor next. He doesn't know very much about it. So for him, that's the end of their story. He might as well be losing a friend to death. And for Elrond, it's still like there's a great adventure on the horizon because I'm not really dying. I'm going to go back to the place which is basically paradise anyway. And I remember looking at that scene and thinking, that's the only time you've managed to show me anything like that. And it's annoying given that you've got such a prominent set of storylines with elves and dwarves side by side that they can only find one way to actually convey the difference between them. And then they forget about it completely because for the rest of the time, they all spend they're exactly the same in terms of personality. It goes back, I think that's one of the big problems with compressing the timeline the way that they've had is that you can't really draw out these distinctions in a way that you could say with a time skip. I liked the idea that if they hadn't compressed the timelines, you would have a permanent cast entirely comprised of elves. And then between seasons, time skips where everyone else in the cast changes to convey the fact that the elves are immortal and nobody else is. And then over time, you can build up the way they view the world as a result of that. Like, they're not going to be as emotionally attached to individuals as they are in this show because they've seen them come and go. Like all these little things you can do, and it would have been so great to see, and fuck it, no, because they're incompetent.
It would also allow you to, because what I've always missed in shows like this is that the exploration of this idea that maybe there is something noble and actually something admirable about as humans, our frailty and our short lifespans comparatively. You know, that we then learn to cherish the time that we have, that we learn to make the use of it as best we can and appreciate it because our lives are short, even compared to dwarves. Like they live several hundred years within the canon of Lord of the Rings. Humans, you know, what are we going to get, like 70, 80 years? I think the men of Numenor maybe live to about twice that, but it's still very limited. And it would be nice to show maybe some aspect of that, like the reason that humans are so industrious, the reason we expand and build and create and invent and try to advance ourselves is because our lives are short and we want to make the most of the time that we have, whereas elves don't appreciate that. Again, it's something the show could have played with, but it doesn't bother because it's so compressed. It never gets to explore themes like that.
And it did in the Lord of the Rings movies. I feel like Return of the King, they did that with Aragorn, and they didn't have nearly as much time to play with. And I find it amusing too, with like Celebrimbor basically talking about the frailty of man, of why he doesn't want to give them the 9 rings at all, while he's, you know, simultaneously, you know, being gaslit like a teenager.
Aragorn's a really good example because there's even in the Two Towers, I think it comes across a little bit stronger in the books, but the films managed to do it in a very sort of admirably short period of time. There's that almost jealousy and a sense of inferiority from Theoden to Aragorn, and Theoden, who looks so much older and is the King of Rohan, seems in some way quite defensive in Aragorn's presence because Aragorn is, though looking younger, older than him, rode to war with his grandfather, and you have that sense of, but I'm the king here. Why are you trying to upstage me by being more competent? And it's like, and that's like not even really a subplot. It's just a character beat that Peter Jackson thought was worth including and makes their relationship seem so much more full as a result. And that's not even the difference between elves and men. That's just Numenorians and slightly lesser men. Whereas, yeah, like Rings of Power can't do it with the most stark contrast imaginable, which is going to be very damaging because episode 5 finally gets you onto the Numenorians and the motive for the Kingsmen. The first time I think the show was mentioned ever that the Numenorian Kingsmen are in some way afraid of death and jealous of the elves, because season 1 decided, oh, we just don't like immigrants for some fucking reason, even though they don't come here. Like, that's when
elves taking our gerbs.
Why did you not do that then? Why haven't you been building this up from the beginning? The idea that there's a faction of Numenorians who are jealous of elves and their immortality, given how important that's going to be.
It's a great conflict. When Pharazôn is looking out towards the horizon and talking about how no matter how high we climb and how far we reach, like all of this stuff will still be beyond our reach because we'll never be elves. We'll never be on the same level as them. That's good stuff. You could do a lot with that if you take the time to build it up gradually.
Yeah, I agree. When you do read the books or see the films, it does instill in you that kind of interesting sense of the folly and fallibility of humans and you know, trying to rush everything in a lifetime. So there is that nice contrast that the elves give you. But here, yeah, the elves are just act like dumbasses and frustrating people with little to sort of contrast, which is frustrating. Like Celebrimbor, there's a guy standing down there in the rain. Well, let's ignore him for a while. He's still standing down there in the rain. Well, okay, let's go down there and check out what's going on.
Better let him in then. He seems quite determined. I'll never understand the reasoning as well, where it's like, okay, we made the 3 rings, that seemed to go pretty well. We've made the 7 for the dwarves. We're getting rumblings that they might have been compromised somehow, and it's turning the dwarves crazy. What should we do? Make 9 more, I guess, and just hope for the best. Okay, well, I'm convinced. Sure, let's do that.
I'm trying to work out as well what Celebrimbor's motive for that is. It's hard to say he's been assassinated because I think he was always a shit character, but like, he's an irredeemable one at this point because he is so dumb. But he's the one who initially resists the idea of creating 9 rings for the man, because men are so easily corruptible. This is the person who went along with the idea that more rings equals balance at the end of season 1 for some reason. 2 is divisive, but 3 is balance. And then it's, well, 7, I guess, is like even more balance. But then 9 comes along and it's no, 9 is bad because the men are corruptible. But he's also, he sends a letter to Gil-galad saying, no, I'm shutting the forge down. The letter somehow makes it to Gil-galad whilst the people are trying to travel from Lindon to Eregion to warn him, but the letter gets through in less time. I don't know. And then at the end
Maybe
of
he
episode
sent it by
5, he's
Eagle
like,
or something.
maybe he just had this brilliant idea of giving them fucking horses so they don't just have to run the entire distance like the rest of them do. So that timeline stuff doesn't make sense. But then by the close of episode 5, it's oh well, you lied to the king, and like he won't be happy if he finds out about that. So like the only choice you've really got is just to lie again and just make some more rings. And then he goes from no, we can't do that to yes, that's a good idea.
I mean, I assume what they're going for with Celebrimbor is almost like the mad scientist arc, where he's so immersed in his work and the possibilities that it offers up. Like we can make, not just rings, but we can like reshape the very world around us with the power that we're wielding here if we just have the time to develop it. And he's terrified that this is all going to get shut down. His grand project to essentially save the world through the elves and the dwarves and like unite all of the races of Middle Earth. Which is fine, I think, as a character motivation. But again, like you need to take some time to build that up and make us really understand how important this is to him and what his motivation is for it.
Well, you could make him like David Marcus in The Wrath of Khan, where he's been trying so desperately to get this thing going, but you need this extra thing called protomatter, some extra thing which is dangerous or volatile. Try and take that road at least.
Well, I think, even I'd go a step beyond that, because within Star Trek, they already live in a fairly idyllic utopian society. You establish, say, a cataclysm or some kind of disaster that they're facing. In the case of Middle Earth, it's the decline of the elves and the fact that their powers are fading to the point where they're going to have to leave. Well, okay, he's able to reverse that with the power of the rings. Imagine what we could do to help out the dwarves with their various problems that they're facing, and then men. Imagine if we could unite then all of these different races in peace and harmony to build a better world. Like, okay, that's a noble enough goal to strive towards. Give us a bit more of that, please, and your motivations and your belief that you can make this happen. Because that's fine.
Play to a sense of hubris, like as elves, as the elevated species, it's the onus is upon you to create this kind of stuff. So play to the hubris, but they couldn't even do that. No, he's just a dunderhead.
Or the hubris of the individual, like Celebrimbor, you, the master elven smith, will go down in history for all time as the elf who saved all of Middle Earth through the power of your rings. Again, like that. Again, that could probably appeal to his ego, which I'm sure exists as a master craftsman. But again, we need a bit more development there. It's just we're surprising.
Yeah, so there's a line or two which sort of lead you along that sort of strain of motive, because he does have toward the end of season 1 when Halbrand arrives at Eregion, and like Celebrimbor already has conveniently 3 of the gems, even though he's not yet conceived of the 3 rings. He's got the gems for the 3 rings before the idea for the 3 rings. And he does say, his grandfather was Fëanor, and he always dreamed of creating works that could match his supreme mastery of the craft. The problem is that only really makes sense if you already know who Fëanor was and what that represents, because the show never explains it to you. So all we really get is, oh, there's a guy called Fëanor who made good stuff, and I too want to make good stuff, and that's it. Like all of the actual character depth relies on knowledge that the show is not legally allowed to include. I don't think anyway. So it's a tricky job, and they've massively flunked it anyway. It's not a great example.
You guys might be able to help me out in this, because my ring lore is not quite what it used to be. It's my understanding that the various rings, like the 3, the 7, and the 9, they do not corrupt inherently. It's not until the one ring is forged that it begins to take control of the others.
That's
and then it's
what I thought.
Because like we get these scenes with Durin, who like he's acting as if this is the one ring. He's starting to become a bit obsessive about it. He's preoccupied with where he's left it and so on. And I get why they're doing that. It's like, hey, remember this? Remember how the one ring used to do that to you? As far as I understand, the 7 didn't do that. Not until the one ring had been forged. That was the corrupting influence.
Pretty much. So Anatar, or Sauron as Anatar, creates or inspires the elves to create all 19 rings for themselves. They're all elven rings of power. He doesn't actually take them to men or dwarves until after the sack of Eregion, which is coming at the end, I think, of this season. It's only after that he puts the ring on, the elves realize they've been betrayed, and then they take the three off. The three are the only ones made outside of his direct influence. So Sauron attacks Eregion trying to get all of the rings back, and the only ones he can't get are the three that Celebrimbor made. But they're not put on again until after Sauron's defeated. He then takes them and gives them to men and dwarves because he believes that with the power of the one, he can influence them and control them in the way he hoped to control the elves. He can't do it with the dwarves because the dwarves are similarly to the elves immune to his direct influence, but they do, under the influence of the one, turn him in. They make the dwarves very, very greedy, corrupt, and quite violent toward each other. Like they fall to civil wars and things like that because the rings are inspiring them to greed and jealousy. But they aren't giving him direct control, and there's not the same sense that, like you're right, they're trying to mimic the One Ring before the One Ring is created.
They even
It's
had
going to make it awkward when they do create the One Ring, because then what's the fucking difference? But yeah, they're trying to preempt themselves, I think, with that, and not doing a very good job.
I recall the lore being a little bit like patchy in Lord of the Rings. Like, you know, the 3 elven rings were accounted for. The 9 obviously went to men and they all became ring wraiths. The 7 dwarven rings were just kind of described as being either lost or destroyed. And so, or, you know, Sauron, I think, recovered a couple of them. The others were lost. So it was a bit patchy as to what had actually happened with them. But yeah, I sort of got the impression that dwarves weren't as corruptible as men were, and so they couldn't be used in the same way.
Yeah, and the minor rings, they can be lost and destroyed, because then only the One Ring is the one that you have to take back to Mount Doom. It can only be destroyed where it was created. But that's the slightly tricky thing Rings of Power Season 2 stumbled over and then tripped over and then fell on its face about, which is that Season 2 begins with Elrond thinking the rings are such a terrible thing, they must be destroyed. And instead of just throwing them into the forge where they were made, because he's standing right next to it at the end of Season 1, he grabs them and rides all the way back to Lindon and then tries to jump off a cliff into some water. It's like, you could have just done it. If you wanted to destroy them, you were already there. Just throw them back into the forge. You're fine.
Yeah.
I was confused as well, because the rings seem full of portent and power and premonition already, and already seem to be having some sort of corrupting influence. So I don't quite know what was going on. But as always, you just attribute that to the show's laziness and desperation to use.
It's
use
just a
tropes
sense of
and stuff.
memory. It's all it was used for. And like another thing that's just fundamentally bothering me about the show too is there are too many goddamn characters to follow. So like it has the Walking Dead syndrome, where like the first 5 seasons, Rick was clearly like the primary character, but they'd lose you for like 2 or 3 episodes, which would be like 2 or 3 weeks at a time, with some side character or something that they'd focus on that you didn't know. So, and they skip around throughout entire episodes where like the Lord of the Rings as a narrative works because they're massive groups of characters, or someone with, someone from Rohan connects with the Fractured Fellowship and yada yada. But in this, it's like a group of 2 or 3 characters. Then over here, it's another group of 2 or 3, 1 or 2, and it's just so hard to. That's what's making it so goddamn boring.
Why the Peter Jackson trilogy, and I guess by extension the actual books that it's based on, it works so well is that it focuses you in on the tight original group of characters. Like you get to know Frodo and Sam, then you get Merry and Pippin introduced, then they meet Strider, then they head off to Rivendell, and that's when they meet the other members of the Fellowship. So you're gradually getting introduced to all of these different people. You get to know them over the course of an entire movie. They get separated in the second one, but it's fine because we know them now. We understand where each group is going. And that's when you can then introduce the Riders of Rohan. That's when in the third one, you can introduce Gondor. Like, it's all fine because you're going on this journey with characters you already know. With this, like you say, right off the bat, there's like half a dozen different factions that we're supposed to know about immediately, and we're like thrown into all these different plot lines, most of which are kind of irrelevant, or they're just spinning their wheels. I have lost track of where Gandalf is even meant to be going or what he's doing. He is just going through the same thing episode after episode. If you want to suggest, Dan Galf. But yeah, if you want to suggest things to cut, you could easily cut him out, and the 2 fucking Harfoot characters. I can't even remember their name. Nori and Poppy or something.
It's Sam and Frodo Light, or gender swap.
Kill them. They are literally there just so you remember what the hobbits are, but they can't call them hobbits because of licensing issues.
The licensing issues thing. I thought I read in Vanity or Variety or whatever an interview with the JD Payne and whoever the other guy is. They said that they do have the rights to Lord of the Rings. They do have the rights to the 3 books and The Hobbit. so they could.
I don't
reference
believe them
but
when
I,
they say
I
that.
know I don't either, because I'm like, well, why don't you? Why didn't you call the Shire the Shire? Why is it the Suzat?
There are precursor hobbits, I think, mentioned in some of Tolkien's material. So, like Harfoots, they have taken the name from it. I think Stores is also taken from.
Yeah. No, they
Yeah.
are. They are in
Well,
the lore.
there's a pretty long like preamble to Lord of the Rings that describes the entire history of the hobbits and the founding of the Shire and all the different breeds and stuff. So it's like, okay, fine, but like, I guess my point is like they don't narratively, they seem to contribute nothing to the story. Like when we get to meet the Stewards and their ridiculous little encampment, it's not helped by horrendous acting and horrendous dialogue, but like it just comes across as like kiddies' play hour or something. It's so stupid and
it
it's
literally takes the
unnecessary.
tone of the never-ending story for like a
Yeah.
few minutes when we go into that
The
place.
episode 5,
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it's the best, but it's the least terrible out of all the episodes in the entire show's run because it eliminates the Harfoots. They're not part of it. Galadriel's not part of it. It's like whatever you've got that equates to halfway decent characters are in that episode, and they're the narrative focus. And it feels like more an attempt at having adults having adult conversations. That's the closest we've gotten to Lord of the Rings with this show. It's probably the closest we'll ever get. But yeah, it just shows how much flab there is narratively with this. There's so much unnecessary stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And I think in episode 5, I have a very, very dim view of the stuff that actually happens in episode 5, because I think a lot of it's really terrible and the characters are really shit. But like to the extent it's less arduous to watch, it is because it gets the pacing better than any of the preceding episodes in the series. Like we're not cutting away to people walking for a really long time through a desert cracking bad jokes. Like we are not wasting time. We're doing silly things, but things are happening. And I'd give me things happening as opposed to, oh, let's cut away to see what Gandalf's doing. Oh, he still doesn't know what his name is and he still wants his stick. Oh, good. That's exactly the same as it's been since like season 1, episode 2. And we're still doing that. And we don't have to go and like, see like the freaking terrible stores. Also, it's like I said on EFAP on Saturday, it's like they're actually making me feel genocidal every time you cut away. And then you realize that we've just spawned more Harfoots and still nothing's happening. It's like, just go away. Stop. Like, if you condense this down and you had a plot line for elves and dwarves and men, that would probably be fine. And you can bring the wizards in as they're supposed to come in at some point in the later season, all together, fully formed, already characters, no journey to go on to discover what their names are and how they get their sticks and shit. Just, Grand Elf. Fucking, his name is Grand Solo.
Some kind of Grand Elf? God.
It's
No,
so
because it's
bad.
like his staff is called a Gand. Remember, that's what it's referred to. It's like he's got to find a Gand. That's what I think it's Poppy who says it. And it's like, okay, I see exactly where you're going with this.
And then one of the stewards are describing him as tall as an elf, and then they said, like, what is he, some kind of grand elf? God.
Yeah.
What I would
even-
give for
What am I, some kind of
have
Lord
him.
of the Rings?
We're like a fellowship or something. But even when they go from one sequence and they cut away to another, there's not even the basics of there should be some rising tension, then cut, then go to another scene or group. But just in the middle of some bland, desiccated action stop when they were in a different place. So they even messed that up. But I wrote in my notes that there's no clusters of characters of forming honorable and tender bonds, which is kind of what you want from this kind of fantasy. Like, with the Fellowship, there's rivalries and tensions within it, and there's people coming and going, and there's always the looming threat, that you're one step ahead of. But here you'll have a scene where it's Arondir and the girl and Isildur in the swamp, and it's just so static and desiccated. It has no purpose, and it doesn't have any momentum to it. You don't know why these people are together or what their interesting interplay is. It's just nothing there. It's so flat.
And it's just a side quest they're on. Like that entire thing, they only get together because they need to go and get a horse. And then one of them gets captured, so they need to rescue him. But like, that's not leading anywhere. And they've just jumped these two people, like this collection of people together with no backstory, no real relationship. They're trying to fast track a relationship into being. And by the way, in the lore, Isildur's wife is never named. Isildur has quite clearly got the hots for this Estrid woman. And Isildur is Aragorn's ancestor, so we're kind of seeing probably the origin story for Aragorn's lineage here as well. Isn't it as dramatic and grand and epic as you always imagined that would be?
Well, the annoying thing is that character arc or that grouping of characters is like Isildur is the most passive and the most useless out of the three. right? Arondir is the guy he's the action man who can like take on any enemy and stuff. Estrid is the one who knows like the ways of the wild men and can lead them where they need to go. And she's got a few secrets and stuff. So there's very much a narrative arc centered around here. Isildur is just a guy, a doofus, a fucking dork who's kind of useless at everything. He doesn't really know what he's doing. He doesn't know how to fight. He immediately gets entranced by this random girl who's like, you know, he is a lord of Numenor. He could have any girl in Middle Earth that he wants, but no, apparently he's got to have this one. And it just makes him small. It makes him seem kind of pathetic. And this is where you need to start building him up as a hero. This is the guy who's going to cut the ring from the fingers of Sauron. You know, this is not an insignificant character. He should be a dangerous, powerful individual in his own right. And he just seems pathetic. And it doesn't help that he's played by what looks like a small boy. You know, there's absolutely... I compare him to something like Boromir or Aragorn. Those actors look like they inhabit the roles. They make it believable. They make it look like this is a movie you should take seriously. With this show, it's just generic Gen Z pussy. Like, that's all he is. Like, he doesn't look dangerous. He doesn't look like he can swing a sword. He doesn't look like he's a warrior or anything. He's
even this weird beta boy too, because at the end of episode 5, like her real boyfriend comes running in. He's like,
he gets cock blocked.
yeah,
You know, like,
by a
from a
tramp,
wild
basically,
woman
as well. It's not
yeah, he
even-
should
not
march
even
in
the-
there with like an axe in each hand, like, I'm a Isildur, motherfucker, and just like behead the guy and like carry the woman off over his shoulder or something, Conan style. But
Well,
no,
he
I
had
jest,
the
but
he had the savvy and the intuition and perception to look at the key next to the girl and say, "Is that the key for the handcuffs?" So
God.
that's
I
pretty
lost
good
faith
reasoning.
I lost faith in humanity at that point a little bit. Why did they have to spell that out?
They do that constantly throughout the show, though. Like Gandalf did it with Tom Bombadil. Like Tom Bombadil basically says that, you know, he's going to be the one that has to do something, and he's like, "You're talking about me."
I honestly think they can't use visual inference in a show like this because I think it's based on the premise, right? That most people aren't even watching it. They're probably looking at their phones and just listening to it in the background. So they have to have characters say what needs to happen and what's going on because people won't see it.
I'm
I
surprised
think that's the
characters
reason.
haven't said something like, "This is a sword and I can stab you with it."
Yeah.
Something like that. Like,
Well,
it's-
yeah. After she betrays him too, Isildur, while they're walking, he's just reiterating exactly what happened, as if the audience wasn't there the entire time watching.
You weren't. They probably
Well,
there
they
is, the
weren't.
audience wasn't there, so
Yeah, and when they do have visual prompts, they're usually very extreme and in your face, like that dude is
Sausage fingers that goes and grabs the ring. And
Yeah, or that dude who's sailing out of the ocean and his one task is to throw the rings overboard, and there's like a huge gust of wind and then a thump as the thing lands in his boat. Oh, it's a visual prompt. Something happened.
Zack Snyder
Yeah.
style.
poetry
There's
rhymes.
too many characters, right? So there's like too many characters to keep track of in this huge sprawling thing, but at the same time, we're not losing any characters. So we had one off-screen death of the Dr. Quinn medicine woman character,
Which was
But apart from that-
unintentionally hilarious. It's like orc
Yeah.
arrows take a long time to take effect or something.
But
Like,
shouldn't we have
okay,
a sense
just
that
died.
shouldn't we have a sense that this is a brutal and unforgiving world where people can die, and yet we just have the same over bloated cast mingling around, going from place to place with no particular sense of dread or suspense.
Well, that's another fault of, I think, the compressed timeline is that they've introduced all of the people that they believe they need all the way through the 5 seasons. So they can't really get rid of anyone. Like every character they've brought in, including people who shouldn't be around for another few thousand years, has to be there for the duration. Every named character has to survive. Otherwise, the entire plot of the thing breaks. And if you're going to have that from season 1 through season 5, you're going to make your job way more difficult, because how are you going to bait the death of Elendil, for example? As a scene that in season
Yeah.
1 gets dragged off his horse by some orcs, and you sit there thinking, oh my goodness, I wonder if Elendil is going to die. No fucking, of course he's not going to die. Isildur's not going to die. None of these people can die. The only ones that are at any risk at all are probably the ones the show has invented. So Arondir, but I don't think they would kill him because he's one of their anchor beings. They really like him. So it's yeah, and then you've got the other problem as well, which is that there are, I think, too many characters, yes, but that's because there's too little to do with them. Like Game of Thrones doesn't have that problem. It's got a huge cast, many different places. but there's always something as a hook to keep you going. It's very easy to keep track of, even if, as it's deep and intricate, because there's a reason to invest in these things. Nobody just gets sent off to walk for several hours through a desert. The Rings of Power, though, doesn't have that ability. It's not only got a lot of characters in lots of different places, which it's lately decided to split up. So now we know Gandalf has been split up from the Not Hobbit. So now you've got 2 pointless plot lines in the desert rather than one. That you've also got like very elongated arcs for characters like Isildur, who I'm sure they will want to pick up eventually. His arc from season 1 through to season 5 will be going from boy into man. But that means you've got to put up with him for 3 or 4 seasons being incompetent and stupid, and also probably in this season not relevant to the A plot. He's in the wrong place, he's on side quests, and I don't think they have any way of getting him into the action. So I wouldn't be surprised if we finish season 2 and he's still over near the Southlands, still looking for his horse.
He's in a holding pattern right now. They're giving this for him to do, just so you remember that he's a character which exists. But yeah, to pick up on that point you made, you're very correct, actually, in that Game of Thrones had individual character arcs, whereas with this, we have group arcs. So with say, Isildur looking for the horse or whatever, or just like going on this quest, that is a quest that then involves Isildur, Arondir, and whatever, Estrid, right? So that's 3 characters who all have the same problem they're tackling. With the dwarves, and the problem where they've had their light blocked off by earthquakes, that is a problem that then consumes Durin, his father, and Disa. Again, 3 characters all consumed by the exact same arc, the same problem. And it goes on and on. There's, as you say, just not enough for people to do. If this was Game of Thrones, or if it was that level of writing quality, like at least the early seasons, they would all have their own subplots in amongst these bigger problems that they're pursuing. They would have intrigue. They would have interpersonal, dramas and betrayals and conspiracies that they're all involved in. But it doesn't have that level of sophistication in the writing because the writers just aren't capable of it.
Yeah, so we have... go ahead.
After you. No, after you.
Oh, so there's no particular sense of sacrifice or loss of characters. There's no sense of valor anywhere. There's no sense of protecting the innocent anywhere. There's no sense particularly of what distinguishes humanity from the dark opposite. There's no sensuality or romantic stakes. And so everything is desiccated and kind of sterile. That was my thought.
Yeah, and it goes, that sort of feeds into the point about the lack of the interpersonal stuff generally. I mean, I think I enjoyed the dwarves probably most in season 1 because they actually had a meaningful journey, which was rooted fundamentally in an interpersonal one. It was the father and the son, and the son and the friend. Elrond and Durin had a pre-existing relationship that they carried in, and so they were able to tell the story they wanted to tell through an evolving personal friendship, and quite a deep personal friendship, and that was juxtaposed with the strained relationship between Durin and his father, the overly cautious king, and the aspiring and aspirational and younger and more reckless son. All of that, I think, made those parts of season 1 really compelling, as well, relatively compelling anyway. There was something to latch onto, someone to give a shit about because they gave a shit about each other. But every other character is either completely new to their surroundings or completely new to everybody else around them. So they have nothing else to talk about except whatever the meta storyline happens to be. You get Galadriel kind of knows some of the elves, but she doesn't have anything to say that doesn't concern the rings. You have Halbrand, who she'd never met before, so they can't really talk about anything either. None of the people in the Southlands really know each other. All of these can only speak in these highfalutin, like incessant metaphors about things we don't give a shit about, and they don't care about each other. And if they don't care about each other, why should we care about them?
Remember Fellowship of the Ring? Remember when there was actual fellowship involved there, and you really got that sense of
I remember
a team, bonds of friendship, honor, loyalty. That was nice. I like that. I don't think we're going to see that again.
Nope.
Again,
your path is made of seawater. Take care to keep your feet beneath you. It's a long way to the bottom.
Someone at some point, right? They need to trawl through seasons 1 and 2 and compile all these tortured metaphors into one supercut.
Oh, God.
I'm your guy. One step ahead of you, brother.
It will be glorious when it's done because, man, there is gold in that show. There is absolute gold.
Cringe gold.
One other thing that's missing is no sense of the rustic. Like Tolkien, he loved the Midlands and he loved that rustic charm. kind of pre or post-war Midlands. Here, everything is kind of austere. You got places of commerce, bleak villages, the Southlands, or Jim Henson style weird communities in the desert. So there's that kind of missing that rustic element as well.
I think the Hobbits were a reflection of that, and obviously we don't really have them yet. Like, they were quite clear, I guess, with this promo for this show that the Harfoots represent a kind of tribalistic, primitive version of Hobbits. They haven't advanced to that level yet. So I guess in universe I can kind of accept it, but like you say, the result is that it's not anchored by anything identifiable, especially with British culture. It's much more like a tribe of fucking wild hobos just like walking through the wilderness.
What happened to them, by the way? I kind of lost track of what happened to that tribe.
They went off and died, I suppose, because
Well,
like they're not relevant to the plot.
The end of season 1, because the Poppy's arc is very clearly supposed to have ended in season 1, and they have very clearly changed their minds to include her. Because at the end of season 1, when Nori sets off with Gandalf, Poppy stays behind, and she's basically invited to become the next trail finder for the village, because Lenny Henry dies, his wife is shit, and she was reading the map upside down, and Poppy corrects her. And then she's like, well, why don't you be the trail finder then? And then when Nori says goodbye, she's like, please, take care of my family because my family's still here, And Poppy says, yep, I'll take care of your family. So when she turns up in season 2, you think, okay, so you've broken your promise, you've abandoned your people, and they are probably going to, the dead marshes when you look down and there's all these corpses rotting down there. There's probably the Harfoots because they got lost and just wandered into the swamp.
Well, couldn't they have had it that tribe got ravaged or pillaged or brutalized or marauded against and dispersed? And so then you could have some nice sympathy and a nice little arc for the two characters who were kind of refugees or out on their own. And so they're clinging to the stranger and they've got some sense of purpose there. Wouldn't that have been at least something?
Maybe we should ask the writers. That would be a good thing to do. Ask the writers, but they're too busy tweeting and giving out.
There was a podcast last year where they were being interviewed, and the interviewer said something that they, that they personally recognized in the show, and they were laughing like, "Oh my god, yeah, exactly. We totally meant to do that." I don't think I didn't notice that until now.
Yeah, I remember that. I can't remember what the context was, but I remember the reaction to it. It's like, yeah, you didn't even think about this in your own writing.
Right.
That's impressive.
This message right here is actually from one of the writers, though. So.
Oh yeah, and so showrunner J.D. Payne from the Hollywood Reporter said, "And those who watch every episode and negatively write about it on social media and make YouTube videos, we're happy to have you guys too. It wouldn't be a journey through Middle Earth without some trolls along the way."
I kind of don't mind that comment. I think if you're going to engage at all, that's way better than calling all the fans racist. That's a massive step up.
Yeah,
I gave it a lot of props, actually. When I read that, I was very impressed that he kind of went along with it, but still it was a subtle jab at first, but then he hit it real hard.
Isn't this the same person that called everyone patently evil that
I
don't remember the first season, though? I mean,
it was one of the two. I can't remember which one said it, but
if his insults are getting better, maybe his writing will.
I was disconcerted by J.D. Payne's. He made that hip hop video last week in black and white, so it's quite confronting if you see it.
Yeah, nothing like a good diss track to put the trolls in their place.
Am I completely insane to suggest that this whole plot seems eerily like the Star Wars prequels? You've got this ethereal kind of mystical group at the top who are being easily manipulated by this dark figure who's pulling all the strings in the background and is gradually orchestrating everything. And he's also got this Camino guy who's creating this power that has a built-in switch that he can then flip to then manipulate people. Isn't it basically just the prequels?
It's the fall, I suppose, that's going to lead us into the War of the Ring. But I suppose they're playing with the same sense of tragic inevitability that we all know where this is going. Or I'm never sure actually where they picture their audience as being. Do they picture it as being people who are super familiar with the Lord of the Rings lore and so know all these references, or just complete dummies who've never heard of it before, but they're just there to see action on screen or whatever? I assume
really
it's the
confused about that, because it's an interesting point to make it a proper tragedy. Then you sort of have to assume that your audience knows where it's going, and that the tragedy is in seeing avoidable actions take place. which were not avoided. We already know what the fate happens to be.
Yeah.
We already know the people involved. The tragedy is in seeing how, sad it is that they have to inevitably fall to this situation, how easily it might have been avoided. The Rings of Power, I don't think, is content to do that. That's why it keeps throwing in so many mystery angles. It's like, well, who is Sauron, really? Oh, what is the name of the wizard? Its only way around being an actual tragedy is to use mystery boxes. And I think it would have been way better had it not done that, if it had just leaned straight into the tragedy. We know who all of them are, and we know how it has to end. So stop trying to pretend like we don't, or try and make us doubt what we know, because inevitably it has to end a certain way.
Exactly. I tell you, the one aspect of season 1 that I found vaguely interesting, at least in the first few episodes, was seeing the Southlands before it became Mordor. I quite like that concept, that it was just this relatively peaceful land of like pastures and villages and stuff, and like getting a feel for the kind of people that lived there before it all turns to evil and a land of dust and ash and orcs and everything. I thought that could have been cool if they'd done a bit more with it and they explored it in a bit more detail. But yeah, we never really got that in the end. We just got the Rube Goldberg machine that triggers Mount Doom. Like, yeah, okay, great, well done.
We have a fairly large super and a few others that are related, so I figured I'd pop a couple of them up.
Yeah, sure. Big Blue Minamiku for 100 fake dollars. There's one thing this turgid show has proven beyond all doubt. Christopher Tolkien was demonstrably the greatest exemplar of a gatekeeper in literary history. Simon Tolkien, not so much. That flumpy apple bounced far from the tree before selling out his forebears.
Yeah, isn't he basically a failed writer? And like that's essentially why he turned to this, to get some like publicity for his own books.
I believe that was exactly what it was. Nothing he was writing was selling, so he essentially tried to hopefully use what he could, sell it off, and then be like, oh well, I also have stuff.
Yeah,
this is interesting. According to the Urban Dictionary, flumpy is a grumpy floppy having a tendency to sprawl all over furniture in a very emo-ish kind of way. Great.
I thought it originated on EFAP, but I guess not.
It may have. If it's on Urban Dictionary, it could have originated anywhere.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah, that's like Wikipedia for the dictionary version. So,
thanks for that $100, man. That's a wild super chat. Thank you so much, Mega Spidey Man, for 5 fake bucks, more fake money. Any hope for the Hunt for Gollum movie? I think there's much better Tolkien stories to cover, especially in a feature film. Yeah, and I heard they're splitting it into 2 movies now as well.
I tell you, in the Lord of the Rings book, this entire thing is covered in about 3 paragraphs, where Aragorn just like, he's reporting back at the Council of Elrond to basically say, yeah, I caught Gollum. I had to search like up and down the length of the wilderness for him. I got him eventually. He tried to bite me. I slapped him around a bit because he was an asshole and he smelled really bad. And then I handed him off to the elves because I couldn't wait to get rid of him. That was essentially his story. So I just don't see how this makes for a compelling drama. Like the poster said there is way better stories to tell that are outside the scope of the Lord of the Rings movies that you could delve into.
But it has characters that you like, and that's what matters to Warner Brothers.
I keep seeing those stories about, he's apparently has approached, Orlando Bloom and Viggo Mortensen, Andy and McKellen, and the idea, I think, being to use AI to de-age them.
God.
Which I can't see that going well, especially with someone like Ian McKellen, who is so old at this point. Like, even if they manage somehow to get the visuals looking great, you'll still hear it in the voice. You'll still know, much like Christopher Lee in The Hobbit, you'll know how much older he is now than he was when we first saw him as the character we like. It's I'd love it to be good, but we've already seen the problem. The Hobbit splits 1 book into 3 films, and now we're splitting 3 paragraphs into 2 films. I don't see that going well.
And it's you can never like overcome the way that people move as they get older. Like if they have to do any kind of movement or action scenes or anything, like Viggo Mortensen, he's well into his 60s now. It's like when they de-aged Samuel L. Jackson for Captain Marvel. It's like, okay, he might have the face of a 40-year-old, but he moves like a 70-year-old when he has to try and run and stuff.
Platoon, what did you call it? The Biden shuffle once? I think
it's the Biden shuffle.
The Biden shuffle.
Yeah.
It's a very stiff case. It's the same thing Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones as well. Like, I think the de-aging on his face worked surprisingly well in Dial of Destiny, but every other shot, it's just, if he's in the role himself, you can tell because he's not moving.
Yeah.
It's just...
It's the neck. I don't know if old people just have really stiff necks, but they always turn like this, like when they have to do like scenes of movement or action or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, maybe it just gets like flexible as you get older.
The Batman 89 problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got another one here about Rings of Power. That's a short one.
Low-level enforcer for $2. The Rings of Power visually smells like shit.
I agree.
Yeah.
How
Well,
does
and it-
something visually smell? Just as a point of curiosity.
Rings of Power finds a way. It smells through your TV.
Your best Rings of
Platoon, you
Power
want to read
smell.
that one?
I can, from John Gertz for $2. Your best Rings of Power style metaphor to describe the show. Oh God. Ooh.
Some turds float to the top of the toilet while others sink, but all end up going down no matter what. There you go. Something like that. That's the best I can come up with in
I think
8
that's
seconds.
the BSUP one. Yeah. That can count for all the BSUP.
It has to have at least 2 more clauses beyond sounding naturalistic or off the cuff. So that's
Well,
important.
I went with the water theme because that seems to be the way that they go with everything. And the first thing I thought of was a toilet. So
Okay.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, one thing in the visual style is that I do get the sense that there's actually very little in the way of close-ups on characters and lingering shots on faces during interactions, and it really gives off the vibe that they so want to show off how brilliant the sets are and how beautiful everything looks. So they always have this tendency to linger on wide shots far longer than would normally be necessary.
I think it's because the actors aren't actually good enough to convey like really good emotions up close. So it's best to just keep your distance from them.
Oh, she's got her bewitched
beady-eyed.
snuffle. She's got tons of stuff.
She's got that kind of look about her, like, you know, you've just smelled something suspicious in an elevator with other people, and like you're trying to decide if someone's farted or not, and it's like you've got that vague lip curl of disgust about you. That's kind of what she looks like in most scenes, like.
Yeah, aristocratic flinching.
Yeah,
Even when she's in the wrong.
there's poor people around me.
Neil, member for 1 month. The films did so much with so little, unlike Rings of Power. Oh, indeed. Yeah. $100 million budget apiece.
Yeah, they probably spent more than that on one episode of Rings of Power.
I'd argue it's the exact opposite. They did so little with very much for the show. Let's see, is there any of these? I don't know if there's any more for Rings right now.
I do wonder what they spend the money on, because it's not the cast. Like, none of them are big name actors.
CGI? I mean, the CGI is pretty great throughout the show.
I know, but like, there's not that much of it, really. Sure, like I get the CGI looks decent for the most part in this show, and it does cost a bit, but not like billion-dollar level for the whole season.
Yeah, I've been saying the show simultaneously looks like shit and amazing all at once, because like the lighting, everything's completely overexposed during the daytime, and it's pitch black at night, so you can't see anything.
I'm glad you're not the only. Sorry, I'm glad I'm not the only one who experienced that problem. Like the first episode, especially when Sauron gets betrayed by the orcs and murdered, and he's like the flumpy goo monster that has to flop outside the mountain. I legit could barely even see what was happening.
Yeah,
I thought my TV was fucked.
Yeah, I had to
like, no,
turn
it's
off
just-
all the lights in my living room and like close the shades and stuff, just so I could actually tell what the fuck was happening.
It's not quite Game of Thrones season 8 bad, but it's still quite bad. Their approach being that no, it's not us who's too dark. It's every TV in the world that's broken. Like that's they haven't quite gone to that level of desperation, but it is still it's notable as well. And especially like if you're editing videos on it as well, and you want to try and find expression or reaction shots, you can pretty much ditch any scene set at nighttime because you can't make them out. It's just and it keeps coming up. It's not just Rings of Power. So many other shows do this as well. And the old excuse being that it saves money on VFX, I don't think is applicable here because they have so much money to spend.
Intent matters for 10 more fake monies. Drinker mentioned the issue with focusing too much on elves since they lose their mystique. Any other Tolkien concepts that would be hard to translate to screen, and how would you go about doing it?
Tom Bombadil is very hard to translate to screen, apparently.
Yeah.
The thing that I've noticed the most that they keep screwing up is the map compression, how long it takes to travel places, how the distance, the time. None of it makes sense. You know, Eregion and Khazad-dûm are supposed to be right near each other, but you're supposed to go through like a mountain, so it's supposed to take like 2 or 3 days to do that, and they do it in like an hour.
This suffers from the same problem that the Witcher series has, where, and it's even worse in this case because I've got a reasonable knowledge of like the geography of Middle Earth, but even I'm struggling to remember where things are in relation to each other. And so I don't know how long it takes to get from one particular place to the other. And there's never any visual references. There's one episode where they show like the map where characters travel from one place to another. And that's it. There's a reason Game of Thrones in the intro sequence has a fucking map of Westeros that you get to fly around, and it focuses in on episodes that or locations that are going to be relevant to that particular episode. It's a useful visual guide for the audience to get a feel for the world and where things are in relation to each other. You don't get that here. And so you eventually just detach from it and just assume like, characters will just get there when the plot needs them to, I suppose. That's all where you get to.
Being useful for the audience is incredibly difficult for the writers, because whenever they do make the mistake of telling us how long a journey has taken, it breaks so much stuff.
Yes.
So you'll see that, season 2, episode 1 begins with them riding from Eregion to Lindon in a day, and then season 2, episode 4 is like, well, it's going to take us a week. But no, it's not. You did it we saw you do it in a day. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Or season 1, episode 7, I think it is, riding from Mordor to Eregion in 6 days. Well, shit, somebody should have told Frodo to get a move on because it took him 3 months. And it's just this kind of stuff. It's impossible to square. It is just a case of they will get there when they get there because that's what the writers demand. But then it's very hard to establish any kind of believable ticking clock or any building tension, because you know that they could just as well teleport from scene to scene, and they don't need to be spending as long traveling as they do in certain instances.
Well, the result is that like this world doesn't feel like a world. It feels like a collection of bubbles that might as well just be right next to each other. It could just be a series of rooms, essentially. Like the one character is in one room, a different set of characters are in another room. And who cares how much distance there is between them, because it's irrelevant to the story. They, like you say, they'll just get there when they get there. And so Middle Earth doesn't feel like a world. It just feels small.
Yeah,
and that's the one thing you don't want in a fantasy world.
And in terms of where people are going, I also had a note here that no one has an especially tender yearning to be home despite their journey, and no one is especially drawn by powerful forces to get to their destination. So you don't have either on that end.
The only thing I can keep thinking every time I see someone show up in this most recent episode, especially because I think Durin did it like 2 or 3 times, is the scene from Dark Knight Rises where he just appears in outside of Gotham. That's just how I feel every single time someone shows up in like a Eregion.
Yeah, just warp there. Forget about that.
The home point is an interesting one, but I mean that there are opportunities for them to have done that, and they have either failed to take them or they've undermined them. So you get season 2 has one scene with not Poppy, the other one, Nori and Gandalf, and talking about home, and she misses home, and he says, "Well, I miss home too, even though I don't really remember where it is." It's like, okay, she misses her home, she misses her caravan. 2 episodes later, she's crying because she says, "We don't have a home." And it's like, well, the earlier scene exists. You told us you did. And then they broke it with the elves as well, because all the stakes in season 1. The elves, they had to up the drama, well, the melodrama of the thing by having the elves literally on the verge of death. So either you get the mithril or everybody dies, which means you can't do what the actual books did and say, well, the reason the elves want the rings isn't because they're going to die, it's because everything around them dies. Their home will die if they don't get it. But they've taken the stress off the home part in order to up the stakes of the thing. In so doing, we don't really have a sense of why they particularly want to be where they are or save the places they're in, because we haven't spoken about that at all. We prefer to up the drama instead.
You know, something that occurred to me as well, just thinking about this here, I have absolutely no idea what the state of play of Middle Earth is. When I think about this show, right, I understand from what the show has told me that Mordor is now orc land. Okay, so there's lots of orcs there. And we've got the elves in Eregion and Lindon, and we've got the dwarves in Khazad-dûm. That's essentially it. Everything else around those places, everything in between, I have no idea who controls it. I don't know what the political situation is. I don't know what factions are at play in all those places. It's just open nothingness. That is not what I should be feeling about a show like this. I should understand what the status of Middle Earth is. I should understand who controls what and what territories belong to who. It shouldn't be that difficult. But we've got nothing here.
So at one
Yeah.
point, Arondir says that he's from the Greenwood. The Greenwood is the name given to Mirkwood before Mirkwood became Mirkwood. But Mirkwood
Yes.
is an incredibly important elven realm, which sits between Lindon and Mordor. So you would think the story might take a detour there because they're quite important. And if he comes from there, that's his conception of home. They might be people he would turn to for allyship when Sauron starts rising or the orcs start rampaging. But like, they throw it in as a name because they think some people in the audience will say, oh, they mentioned a place. That's so Tolkien. But the place is empty. There's no one else there. It means nothing.
Yeah.
So the things driving the plot along are a communication breakdown over letters is the big driving thing, and the character of Adar. But there's no particular looming sense of threat there. We have to keep reminding ourselves, who is this person? How do they fit in? What's their motivations? So you're having to constantly do heavy lifting for yourself to remind yourself what's going on, which a show shouldn't make you do.
I legit am amazed that Adar is still alive, that he's still in this at all. Like, because he's such a non-entity as a character. Like, I'm not interested in him. I don't really care where he's going, what he's trying to do, because I know he's not going to figure into the wider picture of the War of the Last Alliance or anything. He's a footnote in history, ultimately, of Middle-earth. So he's going to die one way or the other. What's the point in him? Why should I get invested in him?
Yeah. Another thing is that in the films, you had humor, which was kind of corny and kind of homely and a bit hokey, but it was there. This thing has no particular humor, no levity, no witticisms, and they try a comic relief character in Merrimack who falls flat on his ass. So that's also missing that element.
They tried to bring in a bit of that sort of homely, down to earth. Well, isn't all this crazy what we're involved in with the Harfoots? But again, they're not funny, and the things that they have them saying are garbage for the most part.
Yeah, I feel like the Stuber Mama was the closest thing to levity they were attempting.
Yeah,
and a little bit with the exchanges between Tom Bombadil and Grand Elf, but.
We do have a couple of more super chats and member chats.
Yeah,
from,
sure.
about this. So this one, which has the greatest subtle nickname there, by the way.
Richard Shaft, member for 13 months. Why worry about travel time? Elves are timeless.
This was one I put up before, but when I saw the other one, I replaced it. So.
Joe Eager, 10 real dollars. I watched first 30 minutes of episode 1 of Rings of Power while driving, and it was perfectly safe. The screen was pitch black the entire time.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Got this one.
KJL291 for 10 more real dollars. Thank you. In the lore, wasn't it supposed to have taken 99 years to make the 19 rings? Also, how fucked is the show because they chose to make the Elven rings first?
Exceedingly. I love the idea as well that you can just churn them out, like mass produce them, because I was under the impression that each individual ring was an enormous labor of craftsmanship, of effort, of spiritual energy, of magic, all this stuff combined together to make just one ring of power. Whereas like here, we're told like, oh, we need to make the 9 rings for men. Cool, we'll just pour them into a giant cauldron and like they just come out as a fully formed ring. Well, that was easy. Why don't we just make 100 of them? No
because
problem.
it's completely mechanical. Like they've potentially shot themselves in the foot. They just haven't realized it, and I don't think the show will ever realize it. But because there's no particular magic involved in the making of the rings, and Sauron doesn't do anything special in making them, when you get the dwarves problem, and the dwarves problem is that the evil has reached the mountain, and so we need magic rings to save the mountain. What's magic about the rings? Mithril. What do the dwarves already have? Mithril. What do they need to add to the mithril? A bit of gold. I think the dwarves can probably come up with that themselves. The dwarves could make their own rings. There's nothing special about the production. They've taken the magic out of it entirely.
Yeah.
Except where the show thinks that there is, because you get that bit in episode 5 where Celebrimbor says, no, I'm not going to make the magic rings for the men. And Sauron says, well, fine, I'll do it myself. And then he realizes for some reason he can't, even though the only reason Celebrimbor could do it is because in season 1 he could do them. And Sauron provided the extra. It's like they can't decide who knows what, but the actual mechanics of the thing make it so that anyone could make them. It's not very difficult.
Yeah.
They're also outrageously tacky and vulgar and gigantically chunky.
Yeah,
like
they are
it's bling They made bling.
I described it. They look like a gypsy taxi driver should be wearing them, like just that kind of really like, ostentatious ring that you can see up on the dashboard while you're driving. You know?
Yeah.
I just said they were ghetto. That's all. Ghetto and white
Yeah.
trash geek.
Jeez. All right. Yeah, and speaking of more Rings of Power, season 2 reaches 40 million viewers in 11 days. Amazon says
That's an oddly specific time scale that they've given us there. 11 days.
so. 902,000 caught it in the first 4 days, and then I guess 39 million more watched it in 7. Okay. I don't know. I don't really believe those numbers.
Well,
I think that's
David
40
Bowie.
million views from people like us just rewinding and rewatching because we can't believe what the hell
trying
we
to
just
get
saw.
trying to get.
I mean,
clips out.
I said this on Open Bar as well to put it into some sort of context. Like when I made my review of the first 3 episodes, I got more than that 900,000 views in the first 24 hours on my channel. So essentially, my review was more popular than the fucking show that I was reviewing.
Is this the dodgy metric where they kind of extrapolate and assume households are watching, and so they're then
could be,
factor
yeah.
in
Probably.
2 or
That's
3
probably
people?
it.
They'll be like,
So
oh,
shame.
well, 12 people live in every house, clearly.
Isn't that how Zack Snyder said that Rebel Moon was more popular than Barbie and Oppenheimer?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. If
Yeah.
you assume that every viewer is actually 2 viewers and that watching it for 5 seconds is
That's
the same as
convenient.
watching the full thing and that watching it for free is the same as paying a movie ticket to go and see it, yeah, then it's more popular than Barbie in that situation.
God bless Zack Snyder. Honestly, you'd think if you were that shit at making films, you would know it by now. And you would understand that people don't like what you're making. But
His cult holds
no,
him up,
he's-
though.
His
I guess
cult
so.
of bots that attack every single video that says he's
As long as he thinks they're real, you know.
they're
I mean,
real
I
to
think-
him. Damn it!
Up until a couple of years ago, like I can understand why people might still be willing to stick with him despite everything. But I think once you've seen Army of the Dead and both of the Rebel Moon movies, like what is your argument there that he's still a good filmmaker that has something to offer?
It's all the studio's fault. The studio keeps betraying him in every single film he makes with every studio he works for. All of
Yeah,
them.
it's like,
Why do you think
what's
he
the
has to do
common factor
director's
in all
cut?
this, Zach? I don't know.
We just had another super come in that's sort of similarly related to what we're talking about. So
Yeah, for $5 fake bucks. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up getting themselves stuck with not having access to the Silmarillion. There's only so much in the appendices.
I don't know. I at this point I don't fully understand what they're allowed to mention in their scripts and what they have to allude to or whatever. I don't know. It seems like a legal minefield, this though.
This is a funny comment I just saw. Yeah, even the door gets an origin
Yeah.
story.
Why is it built in Eregion, like, and then has to get shipped to the fucking dwarf? The dwarves are the master craftsmen. They're the ones who made it. The elves just put the decorations on it, and it was built in the fucking mountain where it was installed in
Yeah.
Khazad-dûm. It's part of the. It's part of the hillside. It's not like made somewhere else and then transported there.
it's because the writers have only ever seen doors get brought over to buildings. Like, oh, they must make doors elsewhere and bring it here. That's the only way that it works. It's like, they've never seen a house actually built or anything like that.
Damn, we actually spent over an hour on Rings of Power. I'm shocked.
I'm sorry.
I mean, that's fine.
Sorry, chat.
I did find this great slide that I just had to do. It hasn't. We don't have to talk about it because I don't even know what it's about. But I just love this slide. Apparently,
that's the matchup for the decade right there. Like,
I don't know. I just took it from Google and I was like, I don't even care what this is for. It's going. It's going
Amazon
in the
Prime.
slides
Like,
today.
I love how there's a fucking mushroom cloud in the background.
It's a Balrog in the background.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
that
wait,
is the
sorry, yeah.
Balrog.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't putting it together there. I think because the text was in the way. It's
But
But
like,
the
supposed to be
Balrog's
like
leaning. The Balrog's sort of coming from you. I think the Balrog's on your side in this situation, by the looks
it's
of things.
leaning towards me, yeah. Unless Galadriel was set it against me, you know.
It's like the Dana White of this fight. He's just in the background, like, oh, don't get too close, guys.
Makes
I'd
it look
be
like
worried.
Morfydd Clark actually wants to fight me.
Probably does. I'd be slightly worried because, like, this is a woman who in season 1, she threatens to torture a guy's children in front of him until make him watch them die, and then she'll kill him last. Like, Galadriel is not someone you want to be against in this show because she's such a fucking villain.
Yeah. She is about 2 feet shorter than me, so I could probably take her, I reckon.
That's prime ball punching territory, though, Bert Drinker. You got to watch
That
out.
is true, yeah.
Mhm.
I'll toss up a couple of the quick, like the stickers and stuff.
Sure. Shake from Hunger Team for $10. Send a sticker in. Thanks. Much appreciated. Not Meatwad? Meatwad, dude.
Let's see, I saw another one. This one, my favorite super chatter of all time.
Yeah, Waylon Bacefis for $1.99. Gabe Utsex or Abu Kaki.
Your meat one was
never
pretty
lets
close
us-
to your column, to be honest.
He never lets us down, does Waylon?
I don't know what the
Echoes-
super sticker is, but
I don't know either. Echoes of the Ancients for a $5 super sticker. Thank you very much.
there you go.
And Stephen Delian, member for 5 months. Hey, look, my favorite figs all together.
I thought his name was Stephen DeLorean there. I was
Maybe.
getting excited.
Do I have any other short ones that are kind of? This one's sort of related to short.
M8566 for $2. Which origin story was dumber, Mithril or Mordor?
Ooh, that's-
Mordor, come on.
Mordor. I mean, Mithril coming about because a tree got struck by lightning and is pretty retarded. Like,
It's not just
that's
that.
gonna
It's
be a-
an elf bought a Balrog and they hit the tree, which got struck by lightning twice. And there's a Silmaril in the tree also, by the way, and then it feeds down into the mountain and creates mithril. And that actually probably does more damage to the world building than Mordor does. Mordor looks really, really dumb. But if you actually go and you look at the entire history of the Silmarils, which is basically being condensed into Lightning Strike's tree, that's way more damaging. Mithril is dumber, but like Mordor is funnier, I suppose.
I love how Mithril has just become this cure-all remedy for every problem that comes up in Middle Earth. It's like, you know, we need to reverse the decline of the elves. Mithril will solve that. You know, we need to make magic rings that can fix the entire world. Mithril. Clearly, that's what we need to add to it. Like, why is Mithril doing everything?
It's the Robitussin of Middle Earth.
In the books, it was literally just you can make armor out of it, and it's really strong, and it's really light, and it's really malleable as a metal to work with.
Yeah,
That's it. That's all it does.
It's like the equivalency of like real life titanium. It's light, it's strong, it's malleable. It's good stuff to use.
I like what was it? Seed here says, "Got a cough? Put some Mithril on it." Suffering from erection problems? A bit of Mithril will sort you out, son.
Might as well get this one out of the way.
Is it John Gates for $2? Twist Galore as Boogie's mom. Twist Tipple.
Tipples.
Here's another nice short one.
Breaking Puppet 7 for $2. Love your voice, little platoon, and hail drinker, eh?
Thank you.
Probably
you
should have
put
let
that as well. It's like, little platoon, you sound amazing, and also hi drinker, you're there.
just saying. Probably should have had Platoon read that one. Yeah, just
Imagine Platoon
is,
reading the prologue to the series. Wouldn't that have been like luscious and delicious to hear? Would have been great.
It would.
I should offer my services, all the voiceover work for Rings of Power, and I'll charge less than whoever they've got doing it at the moment.
Can you talk about why boats are floaty and rocks are sinky?
I'd have
Please.
to brush up on my bullshit physics to remember, but yes.
User 5573 for $10. Thank you. I haven't started Rings of Power season 2, but hearing all of you mentioning things season 1 did better is distressing. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. Yes.
It's a race to the bottom, and season 2 is winning.
For another $5 fake bucks. Talking of the doors of Durn, wasn't there a shot of one of them being used as the surface of a workbench in Celebrimbor's workshop? I
I
don't
like how he
recall
calls him
that.
Kella Brainbore.
He sort of does it like he comes up with them before there's it's like much like the gems of the rings. He comes up with it before there's any need for it, and like he has a little bit of mithril left from the forging of the first rings. And we've just established how important mithril is, but he thinks, no, I'll just use this to draw some graffiti on a rock. That'll do. And then there'll be a use for it later, probably. And then lo and behold, it turns out there is one. This is not how sensible people operate, but this is Rings of Power, so obviously not.
Janice for $5. If you were going to adapt the Silmarillion to a show, what would you focus on? Also, good to see Drinker out of the bar, assuming he didn't drive here.
Not allowed to drive anywhere after all those restraining orders, I'm afraid.
I don't know, like with the Silmarillion, you'd have to adapt it not dissimilarly, but actually even more extremely than you do Fire and Blood for House of the Dragon, I think. Like plentiful time skips. You pick either a small area of it to focus on and you just explore that and delve into it, or you do broad brushstroke and you massively time jump between seasons and then you cover the whole story. But it's very, very tricky to do something like the Silmarillion because it is so long and so spread out. But there's so many stories in it that could make for really interesting standalone series. Like the Sons of Fëanor, just follow them around, like waging war against their kin to try and get the Silmarils back. That's a good story. You can involve loads of the geopolitics of Middle Earth in that as well. That would be a good setup for Rings of Power even, but they didn't do that.
Do you have any hope for War of the Rohirrim, having seen the trailer?
No, I mean, I'd like to, but it's what they've done again is they've taken a story which is not, there's not a huge amount, I don't think, of material there, and then they've created a brand new protagonist to tell it in the form of this mythical daughter who's going to be probably insufferable, and who doesn't really. She's, I think, another nameless character. They like the nameless characters because they think they can do whatever they want with them. I would love that to be good. I mean, I quite like the art style. I think it's great to see like it branching out in genres, and it's probably quite a low risk involved as well, but I just don't see it being particularly strong.
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty
I'd like to
audacious.
agree.
They're going to have a strong female character, which is audacious, and she's also going to be pushing against, the confines of a very staid and patriarchal society and blazing her own trail, and rising to become a hero on top of challenging all those norms. So they're definitely striking out into new uncharted territory here, which I think
I
is.
know.
incredibly
When was
brave
the
and
last
stunning.
time we saw a story like that? I mean, it's great to see this new ground being broken.
Mm.
Finally, yeah.
And
It's
I'm
like what we've
sure
been
to be
crying out for
watched
the
by.
past 10 years.
Yeah, sure to be watched by practically no one. But there you go. Hot dogs or sandwich? Oh, this looks like a.
Cynic.
Stephen Delian for $5. Can we talk about something that has more impact with all of our everyday lives, like how hot dogs are sandwiches and how cereal is soup?
Are they sandwiches though? Because it's not flatbread that you're using to make them.
Yeah, but
unless you're
a
some
sub
kind of
is a sandwich.
monster.
A sub is a sandwich.
True, it's in a baguette.
Well,
isn't-
here in Scotland, we would call it a baguette or a roll.
Oh, yeah. We don't differentiate really over here. So
Yeah, you
Yeah.
crazy Americans, you try to oversimplify everything.
I
Stop
think,
it.
I think the big problem, and I think what really it is that we're not realizing how racist we are when it comes to hot dogs and not calling them sandwiches. We're
Yeah,
just
we're being
keeping that
unfair.
separate. Being unfair, kind of
I
like
mean,
this.
you're not discriminating against types of bread, so arguably you are anti-racist.
Well, either way, that was my best way to transition to the next topic.
That was pretty smooth.
was
Like
pretty
considering
good.
it was on the fly, that was okay.
I was like, how the hell am I going to get us out of the Rings of Power? I don't know.
I have not seen this, so I don't have much to say on the topic. But if anybody who has seen it does, by all means, go ahead.
Yeah, I saw it as well. Drinker, why don't you go first then?
So, I was actually quite surprised by it. It's because I hadn't seen the What is a Woman documentary, but I had seen Lady Ballers, and I wasn't particularly impressed by that. I thought it was a very misfiring attempt at comedy. This is more in the sort of mockumentary style. It's kind of like Borat, but like a conservative version of that.
Yeah.
Matt Walsh is on an anti-racist journey to learn more about how we can be less racist, and so that's your premise. He meets various figures in the sort of anti-racist grift, for lack of a better word. It's quite interesting because every time he interviews with one of them, he puts the price tag up for like getting to speak to them, and it's like in some cases it's like $40,000-$50,000 just to do an interview with them. So yeah, it's a prime example, I think, of give your enemy just enough rope to hang themselves with. You know, most of the time he doesn't really try and argue with them in any way. He just asks a few questions and lets them, go into all their contradictions, all their ridiculous nonsense, and essentially make them look like fools. And so it's quite an interesting perspective because I think in a lot of cases it kind of exposes just how many people profit from this cottage industry of claiming that you're anti-racist in order to charge extortionate fees to speak in front of people and just vomit up some incomprehensible word salad that they then clap for because that's what they're trying to do. So yeah, it was quite an interesting documentary, I suppose, overall. And I think I'll give props to Matt Walsh on this one. He's surprisingly funny in a deadpan sort of way, because to do this, he's undercover and he has to kind of improvise quite quickly and think on his feet when he's dealing with people who don't know who he is. And I think he generally does a fairly good job at it. Like I say, he's very deadpan, very dry, and just kind of allows people to almost make fools of themselves. So yeah, quite interesting stuff.
Yeah, I thought it was right in line with What is a Woman, if anyone has seen that. If you liked that, you'll definitely like this too. But yeah, it really exposes the ridiculousness of DEI and the entire monetary culture of it at this point. Like Drinker said, every time he talks to someone, he'll put up the dollar signs of how much it costs for him to even speak to these people. And it's always these like, it's the stuff you'll read in any article, and they're basically just regurgitating the same shit to you. And Platoon, it reminded me of a post you said you tweeted out recently about how to debate someone or how to win an argument, and it's really just to ask super pointed questions. And that's exactly what he does. He doesn't debate anyone really. He just sticks a microphone in their face and lets them talk, and it exposes the ridiculousness of it all. That's exactly what he did in What is a Woman, and it's the exact same vein here. And the What is a Woman comedy, I really didn't think was very funny, just because I don't know. It's Matt Walsh isn't a comedian by any stretch of the imagination, but this is I don't know, maybe it was the subject matter, but it's genuinely pretty funny in a couple moments. And it's, it's a documentary / mockumentary. A lot of the stuff is really happening, but some of it's scripted just to give you transitions because there's a narrative. But those moments are actually worthwhile, and I thought they were pretty funny.
Just to give it an example, like there's one bit near the beginning where he's talking to like an anti-racism professor who I'm sure is self-appointed, but she's explaining to him that like if you have little girls, say, who are into Disney, then you should encourage them to gravitate towards the diverse Disney princesses. And he's like, well, like Moana, for example. She's like, yeah, that's a perfect example. And he says, well, yeah, but we can't have her wearing, say, Moana outfits at Halloween or for parties and stuff, because that would be cultural appropriation. And she says, yeah, that's exactly right. So we couldn't have that. And so his conclusion is like, so essentially they have to support diverse Disney princes, but also condemn them by not like actually wearing any of their clothes or trying to look like them. And that's it. Like, that's the inherent contradiction of all of this. And I think, it perfectly shines a light on just how these people have to live in a world of constant doublethink in order to marry up all these ridiculous concepts in their heads. And there's just so much of it throughout the documentary. And I think what's interesting is he goes through all the different levels, for like from the people working in bookstores who are just like essentially like the mindless seals who just clap and regurgitate whatever they've been told, like without any critical thinking, all the way up to academics who are like shaping the minds of the next generation, and basically filling them with this stuff, to the best-selling authors who are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year just on this absolute grift. And it's kind of hilarious when he gets, is it Robin DiAngelo?
Oh yeah.
He gets her to pay reparations to one of his like technicians who's black, just because he does it, and it's like, what?
He's not waiting for the system to take care of it. He's starting to take care of it now.
Because the moment where it's like, where she's asked to put money into her own pocket, even though she's been paid $15,000 just to do this sit-down interview for like 20 minutes. You can see how hesitant she is, and it's like, well, reparations doesn't mean actually giving people money. It means like systemic improvements to the word salad. And he's like, yeah, but like we can do this now to help them. And like there's this really long pause where he just stares at her, and eventually she's like, okay, I guess I can get my money.
It has actually been quite a, even though it's only been in theaters, what, 2 days? It's already been a pretty controversial movie. We have actually a super chat that transitions pretty well into it. So
JV for $4.99. Will the films you be talking about include Am I a Racist? I know Jeremy Johns upset some people with his review. Yeah, just by the mere fact that it was a review. Hey, look at that. Nice, Dark Hour.
it's almost
Very
like I'm
I
getting
love
good
that.
at this.
Fucking Chris Stuckman is better. Yeah, sure. I'd
I don't.
love to see Chris Stuckman try and review this. I'd love it.
Here's the thing. I think if I was going to make a fake Twitter account to try and make this for the show, I think that's what I would do. Exactly. Eric hashtag renew the acolyte with a LGBT flag, Karn rules with a Z, and I can't quite read what the actual image says, but that just looks like something that would make sense for this.
Well, it is
so.
the type, isn't it? It's always
Yeah.
flags in the bio, pronouns in the bio. Usually they're big fans of the acolyte, even though they can't really explain why it is. The frustrating thing with people like this, and I really want to sort of try and drive it home to them, is that you should probably, if you care about these causes as much as you say you do, you should be supporting exactly this kind of documentary, because what it's exposing isn't so much the problem with the idea. You can have a debate about what anti-racism is, what it entails, what you actually have to do to embody it, if it's a concept you can embody to begin with. All of that stuff, which is the fairly academic thing. But if you care about not being a racist, and there's a lot of people who are making a huge amount of money bullshitting in favor of your cause, you should want to weed those people out of your movement more than any conservative does. Those people are doing Matt Walsh a favor by existing. They're harming you. So if Matt Walsh is doing your job for you by going and exposing the obvious nonsense of the grift of Robin DiAngelo, maybe don't call him a racist for doing that. Maybe say, well, that's good, but at least we don't have to do it. And maybe if you want to get up ahead of the game, go and do that kind of journalism yourself, because this is the cause you claim to care about. Same thing with trans people and what is a woman. It's the same thing. What if you actually care about issues that affect real trans people day to day? What you really want is to get rid of the people who are just trying to dollarize a medical condition and abuse children and turn everybody against your community. This is all stuff that once upon a time you'd like to think people could agree on. Grifters are bad, get rid of them. But apparently pointing out a grift is a grift, and that makes you racist.
Well, I think, the problem is labeling someone a racist becomes this silver bullet that you can just deploy in any situation, and it essentially makes you immune to criticism. If you can just say, well, I'm fighting against racism, effectively that means nobody can criticize you for doing anything, because you can always say, well, what I'm doing is in the service of the greater good. And if you try and criticize me, if you try and undermine the great work that I'm doing for humanity, you are in fact the racist. That's how they've operated for so long. That's how they've been able to operate with impunity. And I think that's why I kind of respect Jeremy Johns for making his review of this, because he opened by saying, like, I was reluctant to even talk about this movie because I know it's like a hot topic subject. And I think the fact that I was reluctant to talk about it is why it needs to be talked about. And I thought, I respect the shit out of you for saying that.
Yeah.
And for actually making the review, because I think it's kind of hurt him in terms of his audience and his viewership. I think he's actually lost subscribers because of doing this. But he was obviously willing to take that hit, I suppose.
Historically, he's been one of the most centrist, just no bullshit reviewers there's been.
I don't think anyone's ever accused him of being like conservative or right wing or anything like that, or left wing. Really, he just seems like a completely apolitical guy who just talks about movies.
Yeah, he
Can't really fault him.
Right down the middle all the time with his reviews. He barely uses any of the hot button words. If he can avoid it, sometimes you just can't because it's in the movie. But he's always. I followed him for a long time. He's never really taken a side either way. So it's insane how he does this once, and it just now he's labeled as one of us.
It won't hurt him in the long term, I bet.
No.
Because I don't watch a lot of the YouTubers that were like grandfathered in, and I thought of him as one, and now I'm like, oh, maybe I'll subscribe to him now.
He's easy enough to listen to. Like his videos are like a similar length to Chris Stuckman, and they're kind of surface level like Chris's, but like he actually puts a bit of like, he actually has a personality and he puts a bit of entertainment into it. Whereas like Chris, you get nothing out of him. So like, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, Jeremy's like a far superior reviewer. It's just you're not going to get deep analysis from him.
he also tends to do his reviews. He gets a lot of screeners and early showings, so a lot of his reviews come out before the movie even comes out. So he has to keep it very surface level because he doesn't want to go into spoiler territory.
I think so. Like
release.
I guess the difference is like you don't sort of get retrospectives from him very often, or video essays or whatever, where he maybe can go back over older movies or talk about this aspect of filmmaking or this aspect of writing, whatnot. He just
kind of moves on to the next one, and
pretty much, yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like it's what he obviously likes to do, but yeah, I guess you miss out on a certain level of depth of analysis sometimes.
Do I have any more?
Why is there so many debates about what tacos are in chat, by the way?
Because some people believe that hot dogs are tacos because of the shape of the bun.
What?
That's it's an American
down the
taco.
chat.
Hey, I'll throw one even out. I'm going to throw one out that it's going to completely. What is a gyro? Is that a Mediterranean taco? There you go, everybody. Have your way.
Up northeast United States, we call them gyros.
Yes, which is incorrect. And
I know it is.
People hate you.
I learned that from Wisconsin people.
I don't know how you. Yeah, I don't know how you
Okay.
pronounce it. Is it gyro or gyro?
It's gyro.
Gyro.
Yeah.
Gyro.
Right. Yeah.
Like
I've
a
had
gyro,
them plenty of times, and
yeah.
they're very tasty.
I mean,
but yeah, never know how to
Drinker would
order
probably
them.
call it a kebab.
Yeah, it's a kebab.
Doner kebab. Yeah. So.
Yeah,
Which
but
took
those
me forever
versions
to
are-
understand what. I followed your videos for so long and had no idea what the hell I thought you were talking about like a skewered piece of meat for so long.
Yeah, that people often get those confused. Like, well, I suppose that's what they are generally, but like over here in the UK, yeah, it's something different. And it's basically the sort of thing you only eat at like 2 a.m. when you've staggered out of a nightclub or something, and you just need something to eat.
I think that was the only super chat about am I racist? So, and I think you two are the only two who have seen it.
Next.
Okay.
Yep.
Drinker's probably going to like this based on his video today.
Oh no.
Poor Aubrey Plaza.
Mm.
You're better than this. Stop being in this show.
Too late. It's filmed.
When is this
Yeah, I guess
out?
they
Is
could
this
do-
out?
3
on-
days.
Next,
Like 2 days from now. It's the 18th that comes
Oh.
out.
2 days. Oh.
This is what I talked about in my video. There's been fucking nothing in terms of marketing. Like, it's only because who did I see talking about this? It was no. Oh, fuck it. I can't remember. It was one of the channels that I follow anyway. They happened to be talking about this. And I thought, oh, God, I better check in on Agatha Harkness because I have no idea when it's coming out. And then I found out it's like out 2 days from now. And there's been no push for it, nothing in terms of chat on social media. And I just thought, oh, Marvel know they've got a stinker on their hands here. I'm honestly surprised they didn't just put it out all at one go, get it out of the way.
I
But
think
it's
Alan from
weekly.
Film Threat said that the review embargo lifts basically the second the show comes out, which is not a sign of massive
that's never
confidence
good.
in the thing. No, the only thing I've
Oh.
heard about it, I think one of the cast came. I use this word in inverted commas. Came out as gay. I think I read, and by came out as gay, I mean she already was, and everybody already knew it. But she decided to remind people because that's publicity. That's the only thing I think I've read about the show. Also, there was
Holy
a poster
shit,
with
an
Aubrey
actor
Plaza in
who's
it.
coming out as gay? Like,
shocking,
whatever
isn't it?
next?
I mean,
Revolutionary.
this is
Yeah.
a character that was like had a bit of sparkle and interest way back in Phase 4, whatever it was. I mean, it's that thing.
Yeah, it was the beginning of
that
Phase
ship is
4.
long
Years
since
ago.
then.
2020, I think.
21, because they skipped all of
2021.
2020.
So it's 3 years of a gap. And like the trailers know that like nobody can actually remember what happened in WandaVision. So they have to spend like 50% of the trailer reminding us of what happened before they can move on to like the plot of this.
I feel like this show is only coming out because they don't want to have the shame of a Batwoman cancellation type, but they also have to simultaneously distance themselves because they're trying to course correct.
Yeah, they are on the brink with Ironheart, by the way. I
Yeah.
honestly wouldn't be surprised if that never sees the light of day. But with this, I'm surprised. It was obviously commissioned during that time when they were still riding high of the success of Endgame. And they thought, man, we can just have spin-offs of spin-offs of spin-offs here. And people will just lap it up. And clearly in the 3 or 4 years since that happened, things have changed quite a bit for the MCU. And no one is interested in this show. Because why would you be?
I think this is related to Agatha. I'm guessing based on the context.
Yeah.
Joe Eager for $10. I'd rather watch a show about the Acolytes lesbian space witches. That would be a great spin-off.
Disney has a lesbian witch problem. They really do. Like it's a weird,
Yeah.
and none of
They-
it is appealing to like teenage boys. It's
Well, this is the problem because they've cast essentially a bunch of like unappealing middle-aged actresses, or in some cases geriatric actresses, to be this coven of witches. There's this weird preoccupation with costumes. If you watch the behind-the-scenes featurettes, they talk constantly about like the amount of wardrobe changes the characters have and how they're all fabulous and so on. There's big song and dance numbers in the show. There's all this like goofy, like, you know, mum sort of humor. It's a show that seems to be targeted to middle-aged women, and I just think that's not a huge demographic in the world
Yeah, how
of the
many
MCU.
are specifically subscribed to Disney Plus? Yeah. Like,
Well, how many middle-aged women who are probably childless and drink wine every night are going to be into comic book movies? I just think that's a pretty small audience that you're trying to cater to there. And it's probably a show that wasn't cheap to make, as all their shows are, you know, super expensive because they don't know how to control their budgets.
M8566 for $5. Seriously, why so many witches? Ahsoka, Acolyte, Agatha, Wicked. Why? Even EFAP watched Season of the Witch. Is that referring
Because
to
Hollywood
Halloween?
is run by a bunch of devil worshippers. I don't know. Like maybe there's
Snow
something like
White. Got one in
weird.
there
Yeah,
too.
there's meant to be something weirdly empowering about witches if you're a woman or whatever. Like maybe they're trying to like address historical injustices. I don't know. I'm in favor of burning them at the stake, to be fair. I think it's the only way to be sure.
I mean, if this was in a situation, like if the MCU was in a better situation, they chose a good time to release it. What with the being right before October, and it would, I think their finale would line up
So,
with Halloween
It
relatively.
literally does. The final episode's on October 30th.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's I guess what they're timing it for. But like, man, the balls on them to release this weekly.
Yeah.
Nobody is going to be watching it.
Like at least all I could say is at least there was one person in their whatever their planning phase that was like smart and was like, hey, we should try to time it with Halloween. And
Yeah.
That person deserves to go get a job somewhere else that's more competent. That's all I have to say.
I think that same person should have said, like, how about we make it like 5 episodes instead of 9?
How about that person probably was like, how about we just don't release it at all?
Yeah.
And then we don't need to worry about it.
But Cynic is right. I think Marvel are in the midst of course correcting because I've spoken to Chris Gore about this. He seems to be very adamant that the people higher up at Marvel, they know they fucked up and they know that what they've been doing over the past few years hasn't worked. And they're trying to course correct now. But there's obviously a whole bunch of stuff that's in the pipeline that was commissioned years ago. And they have to do something with it. They can't just shit can all of it because it's a huge loss of revenue and it's a huge loss of prestige. It's a humiliation. So they kind of just have to grit their teeth and squeeze real hard and get this out.
That's got to be the best sum up that show could possibly get right there.
Oh, that's Rings of Power metaphor from earlier.
Is it Vimorain for some currency I don't know? For 10 of those.
I'll look up what it is. Hold on.
Yeah.
Either way, thank you for the currencies. Which is this space lesbian, which is that, but we don't get even as little as a hot topless scene to have any redeeming quality. Well, Aubrey Plaza's posters for Agatha look pretty great. Why would anyone watch this over any sexy B movie from early 90s? Ugh.
It's a Swiss franc, by the way.
Ah.
At first it gave me congestive heart failure, so I didn't think that was I don't think they were giving
That's
us.
probably not it.
Yeah, that's probably we weren't probably getting 10 congestive heart failure. Oh no.
The Scottish
drink of
internet
Coke.
has struck. Oh no.
Okay. Yeah, it's the end of the show, everybody. No, let's see. I think there's
You
another
would
one
think that the marketing for this show is so easy. You just put Aubrey Plaza in loads of revealing outfits, and that's your entire marketing campaign. Like, what else do you need to do? How do you make lesbians uninteresting to teenage boys?
Uh,
Can I take this one?
Yeah, go right ahead, dude. Go for it.
Sport Nugget, $5. Are we really so low that we're giving Disney credit for releasing a show about witches around Halloween? Yes, I am. That is where I am at. I guess
boy.
until Drinker comes back, we could rapid fire through some of the slightly unrelated ones.
Yeah, sure. And yes, Lawrence, absolutely.
Even
Yes.
I find Aubrey Plaza attractive.
Yeah,
so they
absolutely.
must be doing something right.
She was in a Portlandia skit. Oh my god, so pretty.
Go ahead, Cynic.
Go ahead, Platoon.
Go ahead, Echo.
It's because you can't pronounce it. I know how this works. Toivo Korhonen for €5. Hey, BSUP, Halloween is approaching. Are you planning on doing another horror/slasher movie breakdown like you did with Halloween? Are we? I think we might be.
Fuck yeah, we are.
We are.
We absolutely are. Yep.
So,
I'm super excited about it.
So do you want me to say it or do you want to say it?
No, let's keep it under wraps for them.
Okay.
Keep it under wraps because I literally haven't decided which one, but I know
we could give some details. I think we don't have to announce the movie though.
Okay, it's definitely going to be in the Friday the 13th slasher series. Yep.
And we will. Me and Uninspired Reviewer are going to be doing the production of it as a co-production between our show, which handles that kind of stuff, and BSUP. So it'll be a BSUP two hoes mashup.
Two hoes and a BSUP.
Yeah, it'll be every. I don't know. I haven't figured out what it would be called. So I the other day when Mahler was on, I said it was every hoe a pause. So I don't know what I would call. I don't know what I'll call it for that. But let's see. I got another. That one's for Drinker. So I'm trying to find ones that are like unrelated here. This one's it's from. I must have missed this earlier.
Sure. And Blazin64, member for 1 month. How do we save the elves? Methyl suppository.
By bringing the critical drinker back into the stream. That's how you save the damn elves.
Sorry about that. We had a power cut here. That was weird.
Oh my god.
We were just going through some of the super chats while we were waiting for your power to come back, Drinker.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
So I did have one more slide for the Agatha All Along, but
this is literally the person that came out as gay that was already out as gay.
Oh no, I thought it was one of the women who did it. Like this guy, I think everybody already knew because he was in that what's it called, Heartstoppers, I think it is. But there was one of the female, like one of the actresses, I think, came out as gay. But again, something that people already knew. This is the one who just said though that Marvel isn't, as says on the screen, just for like straight white men. Surprising no one except himself, I think, but there we are.
It's funny, like if you've seen any of his interviews or whatever, you would never be in a moment's doubt that the guy was gay. Like, I don't know why him coming out as gay is meant to be some revelation.
Yeah, he's got some real shocking news for everybody.
Yeah, if he came out as straight, I would genuinely be surprised.
That was I didn't think that wasn't one of those that we were gonna have to go much into, but it did say that it wasn't for straight white men, but I think that's been said about every single Disney product for the last 2 or 3 years anyway. So
I do like the fact that the one and only male character in this show is like the most effeminate guy that they could possibly have found. It makes Torben from The Acolyte look like an absolute bastion of masculinity. That dude is Chuck Norris compared to this guy.
So you want to do more supers, or you want to move on to the next topic?
Move on to the next one because I just saw this. Yeah, this is the movie Speak No Evil, which is actually a Hollywood remake of a movie that just came out 2 years ago. But it was a Dutch film, which was almost entirely in English anyway, but apparently they decided to completely remake it. Platoon, did you get a chance to watch this?
I watched half of it, and then I thought I have better things to do with my time. Like it wasn't awful from what I looked at. It was. I've not.
That's
seen
the problem with the first half.
To compare it with, it's just it looked kind of competently made, but like the kind of film I have seen about 1,000 different times. You know exactly what all the beats are. It's very stereotypical. Collapsing family meets family, which is supposedly idyllic but has dark secret kind of thing. It's like okay, fine, well made, well done. Seen it before. Not going to finish.
Yeah, the problem with this movie is the first half is pretty good, at least competent, like you said, and James McAvoy absolutely slays as the antagonist here. But the problem is that the original that came out a couple of years ago, it had universal themes of the problem with politeness and being a pushover. And I do want to say spoilers for anyone that is interested in actually seeing this movie. You should see the original. It's available to stream, and it's a phenomenal film. It has a really dark, different ending compared to this one. They Hollywoodized this.
I have an idea, Cynic. What we'll do is, since you're warning about spoilers, I'll put the slide back up. Anybody who doesn't want spoilers, put it on mute. When the slide is gone, no more spoilers. There you go.
Yep. So the original film is, like I said, it's a Dutch film, and even though it's about their culture and how they go about things, it was really universal. So even me as an American, I was like, really connecting with the themes, and you're screaming at the screen like you should in any great horror movie of like, stop doing that shit. But you also kind of understand why they are. Because they're just letting this family get away with essentially, and eventually murder. But with this one, they Hollywoodize it. The first movie had, the couple, the husband was struggling because he was kind of beaten down. It was the happy wife, happy life kind of thing. And it ended up costing them in the end of his inability to save his family. And this one, absolutely, of course, they go the Hollywood route, and I'm so sick of saying this shit. I was really disappointed leaving the theater. They turn the mom into a fucking girl boss. She saves the goddamn day. He's an absolute bitch. He's a bitch in the original, but it costs his whole family because he's supposed to protect his family. In this, she steps up, saves the day. And this is also after they introduce this subplot of the fact that she cheated on him because she was unhappy in her marriage. And they try and make you have empathy for her throughout the entire film. And then she girl bosses it out and saves the fucking day. This movie's a piece of shit. And James McAvoy is fantastic at it in this role, but it doesn't save anything. Just like Josh Hartnett and Trap, it didn't matter that he was great in it. Yeah. I thought that movie fucking sucked, and so does this one. And it's a big old negative for me. Fuck this movie.
So if there's no if there's no real repercussions, like if she ultimately saves the day, then what's the social commentary of this film?
There isn't in this one at all. Well, so
Right.
It tries to do the conservative versus liberal point of view. And at first, I like Platoon was saying, was competently made at first. I remember even thinking like, oh, I heard from a friend that likes the original movie that this one I might not like. And I was like, no, this might be pretty good. No, it completely flips everything on its head. It's the liberal versus conservative point of view. He even said himself, James McAvoy, that he was channeling Andrew Tate through this. So he's like talking shit to, her who's a vegetarian and drives a Tesla, and he had it really rough and upbringing, and you fucking people make me sick and blah, blah, blah. It's that's the social commentary, and she wins in the end. In the original one, the bad guys win, because it's a simple universal theme of like politeness and not standing up for yourself and not protecting your family will get your family killed if you meet someone like this.
Yeah.
And that's not what happens here. Fuck this movie.
Like, I saw that scene when they were talking about he was right about the vegetarianism thing. She was just a massive hypocrite. Like,
yeah,
that's
not. But
does that mean I agree with Andrew Tate on something, or does that mean they don't understand what Andrew Tate is?
It means he doesn't understand. Well, what he did was he took a lot of his mannerisms and a lot of the, like, you can kind of see it. You can kind of see it in his performance. And I think that's where what he was channeling here.
It's so frustrating when Hollywood does this. Like, they sacrifice what could be an interesting premise to deal with like actually quite complex issues and present both sides of it in an equal way, and like allow the audience to make their own judgments about, well, what is the limits of politeness? At what point do you have to step up and say, like, I'm not going to take this shit for you anymore, at the risk of stepping over the bounds and offending people, whatever. Versus, well, no, we can't possibly show that the left-wing approach is the wrong one, and so we have to have the vegetarian Tesla driving girl boss save the day because our rules of storytelling dictate that it always has to be that way. Like, well, what's the point then? You're not telling stories anymore. You're just spouting propaganda.
Yep, that's exactly how I knew it was going to be like this, or I'm really worried about it when he said that he was channeling Andrew Tate for it. And I was like, oh, I wonder if the script is going to kind of follow this, Hollywoodism when they, they're going to take a film that didn't have any politics at all. It was a story about just a family and what happens when you're too polite. And no, they turned it completely around. And I hate saying the word woke, but god damn did it feel like that when I was watching it.
He does hate. I've watched him
fucking
tear
hate
his
you
own
for
hair
that.
out over the word. Are you done with the spoiler?
Well, we all do
territory?
because
Yeah.
it's like it's overused to the point of like irrelevance, but sometimes there is no better way to describe something than just saying, yeah, it's woke as fuck.
And that's how it felt.
But like, it's a shame as well because I get the impression this isn't a huge budget movie. This is a relatively low profile thing. And that being the case, like those are the kinds of movies that you think are willing to take more risks generally and might like step outside the Hollywood norm because it's not like $100 million blockbuster. There's not so much at stake, but it seems like no, it's just another one of the usual.
And the interesting thing too is it's like they got the audience they were looking for because it did skew barely, but the majority was female that actually attended the screenings for this, which would not be the case for the original film. So their marketing, however they did it,
they
got
showed
what they
James
wanted.
McAvoy in no shirt a lot. I'm not kidding. That's how they did it. That's 100% how they did it.
Well, I think as well, like women are surprisingly susceptible to movies that are like they start out as a kind of family drama and devolve into more like thrillery with a bit of action kind of stories. Like women are like generally really drawn to that kind of thing. I think where you would start to lose them if you brought in the supernatural or science fiction or things like that. That's when they would check out. But this seems like a pretty straight up dramatic movie. So I can see why it would appeal to them. And it's got a girl boss in it.
It does have a girl boss. Fucking damn it. I'm just such a huge fan of the original. I was really disappointed, one, to even see a remake happening, and then to see it suck this much ass. So what's next, Dark Hour?
So I picked this topic very specifically because I know how much Little Platoon just loves Transformers. So
Oh, wait, that's what this is? I wouldn't even... I thought that was the guy from the X-Men with the helmet who runs through things.
Transformers is like the downfall of Michael Bay as a filmmaker.
He's like the executive producer on this one or something. This is
There's another one?
It's too shit for even him to get involved in.
So I actually saw an advanced screening of this on Saturday, and it's not that great.
Shocking. That's the most shocking thing I've heard in my entire time on the internet. A Transformers movie isn't very good.
What is it? Is it an animated movie? Or?
It's CG.
Yeah.
So it's supposed to actually take place before the original show. They've taken some liberties with some of the things. I'm not going to go because it literally hasn't come out yet. I'm not going to give any spoilers other than the only spoiler I'm going to say is if you do watch it and you first hear Starscream's voice by Steve Buscemi and you're like, why the hell isn't it all like crackly? They break his neck later, so that fixes that. It's the one spoiler I'm going to say. So, but the it's honestly not that great of a movie. And that's coming from someone who actually enjoys Transformers. In fact, my name, my YouTube name comes from the original Transformers movie from 1986.
You're sad.
So, what? Well, one of the lines is the matrix of leadership will light our darkest hour, and that's where I pulled it from. And that in and of itself is a reference to Winston Churchill, so it's like a dual reference. The voice acting's not particularly good. I just can never buy Chris Hemsworth as Optimus Prime / Orion Pax the entire time. I just keep hearing Thor with an American accent. Scarlett Johansson does pretty good. She's pretty much the only one. And it looks good. The second half of the movie is much better than the first, but you have to. So if you take the first half of Speak No Evil and the second half of Transformers 1 and put them together, you have one good movie. There you go. Very strange movie.
That would be a weird one.
You got one good movie. But yeah, I wasn't going to go too in depth in that. I just if you're a Transformers fan, you might enjoy it. I know there's a lot of people who it's been around for a long time, and
It's called Transformers 1, is it?
Yeah, because it's supposed to until the day or all are one is like a phrase that they use a lot. So it's like that they're all one together. And I guess calling it one kind of implies it's the beginning instead of calling it zero like Terminator did.
Sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook to me.
We've had Godzilla -1, Terminator Zero, Transformers 1.
Yeah,
like we're just going back now. We've run out of late numbers because everyone looks at big numbers and thinks, oh fuck, it's another sequel. So now it's let's call it 1 or minus something. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, let's go Doctor Who season 1 as well, just to make things easier.
We don't want to confuse the general public and so on. I was going to say, like, have you guys seen Terminator Zero at all?
Yeah,
I watched the
did.
first episode so far.
Cool. Platoon, have you seen it all the way to the end?
I did. Yeah, I saw it all the way to the end. It's like I liked it-ish, but I do think it trod on itself quite repeatedly by the end. Like its time travel thing actually tries to make sense of previous timelines and ends up making them worse. And it does fly up its own ass with trying to be thoughtful, and it turns out it's just what like a Western animation studio thinks of as thoughtful dialogue. Is like, have humans ever done anything good for anyone? No. Okay.
So yeah, because I feel like that conversation, or like, because it goes on for multiple episodes actually between him and Kokoro, that could have been the genesis of some really fascinating conversations if it was well written. It's a bit surface level, and it's like he dances around the point for so long that it's like, okay, are you ever actually going to present some argument here for why humans shouldn't be annihilated? It does try a bit too hard to tie up all the time travel loose ends, like, oh, everything's connected and everyone knows everyone else in the future and so on. But overall, like, I think it's probably, taking all the Terminator movies, I haven't seen the Sarah Connor Chronicles, but I think it's probably the best Terminator project that I've seen since probably T2.
I would agree with that completely. Yeah, I mean, it's like, despite the flaws are like the kind of flaws that are interesting to talk about, and not the kind of thing like, how the hell did that get made, which is way more like most of the recent Terminator films have been. I did enjoy watching it. It was just it could have been a lot better than it was, and I just like the time travel thing, unless I've completely forgotten or completely fucked it up, it doesn't really follow through with its own ideas about how time travel works. It's like every time you go back, you create a separate and new timeline. It's not a branching timeline, it's a new one, which means that the future is not set, except of course that characters later on treat it as though it is set, because they all know what other future versions of themselves will do, even though they can't do that because the premise is that it's a new time. Yeah, it's
frustrating. It's frustrating as well because it kind of implies that Skynet's never managed to figure this out, but only they have. Like, because Skynet just keeps sending Terminators back through time to try and like assassinate the, Sarah Connor or John, whatever, not knowing that like it's creating a different timeline each time, and so it doesn't really have any impact on their current timeline in the future. It's like, well, okay, why is Skynet with all its like enormous artificial intelligence never figure this out, but you have? I don't know.
Yeah, and is it a new timeline when you send a Terminator back, or is it just a new timeline when you send a human back? Because if it's a new timeline when you send the Terminator back and the Terminator goes back after the human, then the Terminator isn't going to the same timeline that the human they're chasing has gone to, in which case they've just created another new one. So there's things like that which don't make a huge amount of sense. But I would, I would way rather see a Terminator thing which attempts to grapple with some of these questions and doesn't do it particularly well, than a film which doesn't even bother trying and which has absolutely nothing to say. And if you are going to create this dynamic in which John Connor is not the savior of humanity, which is kind of the logical entailment of this is a better way of doing that than going back and killing him in the prologue. Anything is better than that.
Because I think we've kind of focused on the problems with it, and it probably sounds like we're just shitting on this thing completely, but like there's a lot of good aspects to it as well.
Yeah.
And I think I love the idea that it broadens out the story beyond just the Connor family in America. Like this is something that encompasses the entire world, and there's various people that are trying to do various things to try and prevent Judgment Day. and it shows things from a different perspective. And I like that. I like to see what other things are going on at this same exact time period. So that stuff's kind of interesting. And some of the characters I thought were actually quite likable. I can't remember her name, and it's annoying that it's jumped out of my head, but the character that's sent back from the future to combat the Terminator.
Oh shit! Yeah, what's her name?
Because like they don't say it very often, but anyway, she's like the Kyle Reese equivalent in this. I think it would have been very easy for her to just become a typical girl boss who just wins at everything. No, she actually, apart from a bit of plot armor at times when she's fighting the Terminator, she actually comes off worse in a lot of their encounters and gets really fucked up towards the end. And I quite like the fact that they put her through the mill and she's not just an unstoppable girl boss, you know?
Yeah, because
and she's just one part of the narrative.
Right near the beginning, they did. I think it might even be her first scene when they did that thing that so many films and TV shows do these days. Someone fires like a Gatling gun from 5 feet away and it doesn't hit her, and I say, "Oh, for God's sake, here we go again." But they did sort of redeem that. Like the action was more believable. There were more stakes in it. Like I didn't think all the way through, oh well, obviously she has to live because she's just the typical strong girl boss character. It was more like, yeah, no, there actually were some, shots exchanged and she took damage and all the rest of that. That was good to see, and like thematically kind of interesting as well by not having AI as just portrayed as we tend to do all the time in the West as this unabridged bad thing. Like you have this, but the basic premise is that you have Skynet. Everybody knows what Skynet is. Skynet is bad. But you also have, is it Koriko, the Japanese guy's equivalent? And it's kind of interesting, to watch in the prism of current deism, because we are sitting on that precipice of, is AI going to be good or bad for us? Is it going to destroy everything, or is it going to make our lives much better? And I think they integrated that element quite well, because the whole point of his storyline is really just sitting in a room having a fairly cheap but nevertheless a moral argument with an AI that could go one way or the other. So you don't necessarily know whether it's going to be good or bad. Is its version of an alternate future in which humans can survive actually preferable if we have to live under a kind of benign tyranny to one in which we have to all fight the machine? So like there are interesting questions it poses, and I would like to see a second season. I would just like it to tighten itself up massively.
Yeah, no, I agree. But overall, I'm quite pleased with how it turned out, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I only caught in episode 1, so the best I can give you so far is it did make me want to finish the series, which I intend to.
I think it's worth your time.
I haven't finished it either.
But yeah, Dark Hour. Did
you
have something, sir?
So I figured that this was actually a good time because pretty much all 4 of these guys have really helped me out recently, that being Echo, Drinker, Cynic, and Platoon. One thing that happened late last year, I announced it on Twitter. I've talked about it on a few streams, but I lost my job under some really dubious circumstances. And 2024 was really not that great to me. And, one of the things that kept me going was my own show and these guest appearances and, the support of others allow my channel to grow, which is quickly approaching 10,000 subscribers, which is really awesome because I never even thought I'd get half of that. And I really just wanted to thank not only the fans, the subscribers, the fans of the shows I've been on, but all 4 of you guys, especially for supporting me through quite possibly the hardest year I'm ever going to have. It was a very strange time doing a lot of odd jobs from teaching jujitsu at like a bunch of schools around the area, random construction. I never worked construction in my life. I was doing construction, just anything to make ends meet. And then, recently Cynic and Platoon were looking for, someone to be a producer for the show. And I threw my hat into the race and they chose me. And I'm really grateful for that. And it's everything's looking up and I'm really excited to where this is going. So I just want to thank everybody involved with that. And everybody that I'm not able, that isn't on this stream. There's a lot of people who help me outside of it as well.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, there's a reason, we have you on. There's a reason we asked you. You are a good guy and a great content creator. And if anyone in the chat has not yet subscribed to Dark Hours channel, the closer we can get them to 10K by the end of the night, the better, I'm sure.
Here.
Nice.
Yeah, I said the same thing to you when we were talking on Twitter like a few days ago. I honestly think the quality of your content has improved so quickly and so massively over such like a short period of time that I think you really deserve like way more subscribers than you've got. And I think it's nice to see you getting a bit of success now because you've absolutely grafted with this. You've put the work in, really delivered some great content, and it's nice to see you getting a bit of success from it at last. So more power to you, man.
I'll never forget. So for those of you who don't know, the first time I ever did anything on YouTube was with Drinker. So it's really strange. You start on the mountaintop kind of, and to then go back down to base camp 1 and be like, well, now what do I do? And it was a really, like, you watch some of my early videos, they're very rough because I had no clue what I was doing. But I remember, I'll never forget the moment after we went off the air. And I said to Drinker, the first thing I said to Drinker was word for word, I said, that was fucking awesome. You get to do that all the time. And I was like, I want to do that again. And so I'm going to try to do this. It's like, I made that decision that day. I was like, no matter how hard it is, how many, steps I have to take, how many skills I have to learn, this is what I'm going to do.
No, you've absolutely done it. And like, honestly, like watching your videos, I genuinely like get a laugh out of them. Like they'll have me laughing out loud when I'm watching your Rings of Power reviews or whatever.
It's funny stuff, man. It's funny because there was when the Acolyte videos were kind of where I found that groove finally, and it was because I kind of was giving up, and I was just like, I'm just gonna throw everything at the wall and see what sticks, and it just started working for me. So I was like, okay, this is it. This is what's gonna happen.
No, Dark Hour, your scripts are absolutely fantastic, and what I love about you too is you take criticism and advice, and you don't fucking argue or anything. You just apply it and then look at the results. Like,
I argue, but it's more of like it's more of like you're right.
Yeah, and that's whatever. That's fine. And then you apply it and look what happens. Like your videos just get better and better and better, and nothing.
And what did I say to you guys earlier today? I've written the best line that I've ever written in my next video.
Yeah.
I had to stop writing because I knew I couldn't top it that day. I had to go and leave and wash dishes. It's like this.
Just as a point as well. So you're, as far as YouTube is concerned, at least you're at 9,780 subscribers. So you're just over 200 short of 10K. Now there's like 3,700, I think, watching right now. Surely we can get them to 10K on this stream.
And please, if you
guys, I believe in you.
Also watch the video because I want you guys to actually sub and enjoy it, not just sub. And,
No, your last video was fantastic, man. It really was. It was like I was laughing my ass off while I was watching it. No,
and I think as well, like when you do these, the equivalent of a happy hour, I guess, when you're going through a movie. Mm-hmm. You do the homework, and you've got a complete slide deck and everything with like key scenes from the movie, like clips and everything. Like you're way more prepared than I've ever been for something like that. And
it helps. I have a partner that helps me with that on Inspired Reviewer. He does a lot of the slides and stuff. I'm more of the work in the magic behind the scenes in terms of people and such and like scheduling. But we work together really well as a team, and so that really helps.
Yeah.
Sub again.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, hey. But yeah, I guess we'll do some super chats.
Yeah, that was it. We got through all the little micro topics. So yep.
I'll just go top to bottom on the super chats. There's not gonna be any order to them.
There you go, Platoon.
Sphincter's nepotism for 50
I'll be right back, by the way.
Krona. Hi, I recently started content creation and had a video pop up, 6-digit area. Nothing new I make even comes even close. How did you overcome this? Honestly, you just keep going. In my experience, like I try. I don't think I ever really did spend much time looking at view numbers. Obviously, like it's nice to see them do well. But I think if you start trying to chase the dragon in that way, you'll only really be disappointed. I don't know what everybody else thinks.
Yeah, I think if you have a small channel as well and you have a video go viral, don't get me wrong, that's fantastic and it can give you a bit of a boost in terms of subscribers, but you can't then expect every video you make after that to go equally viral and get you like crazy.
Oh, the Scottish
internet
happened again.
Damn. I would say there's never a point where you can relax, breathe out, and say I've made it. The YouTube doesn't work like that. You can't get to a point or a plateau where I can sort of ease back and I know what the routine is and I know how to do it. because people have a sharp ear for pretense, and they'll just switch off if they don't think your content is what they expect. And when I had one big video go up, my natural instinct was to go, okay, seize upon this, try and replicate every possible aspect of it I can. And the next 6 videos after that just had virtually no views.
Yeah, I would say understanding why it went off is a huge thing because you know, you need to understand what you can replicate, what isn't, you know, what you can't. Yeah, I'm such an analytics freak. I'd say every answer you want is in the analytics. You just need to know what to look for. But I don't know if that's necessarily helpful. You have to do like some sort of deep dive. But
for about a year, I'd post a video and I would just sit there watching minute by minute of the analytics coming in.
Yeah.
That's hard to stop doing.
Yeah. It is quite satisfying when you see the algorithm take it, because like the views will kind of be like that, and then the algorithm suddenly is picked up on it and it'll just go like that.
That's nice.
I think the advice I can give is probably definitely the closest one to what this I don't know what the name was talking about is try not to get discouraged. That's the best way, because I would get discouraged and, like, you know, I had a video do well and then, you know, next 5 were terrible in terms of views, and I like I said, right before I started kind of having a decent number of successes in a row, I was like kind of thinking about quitting. Instead of thinking about quitting, use it as a, well, if like, kind of tell yourself like, well, if I quit, then I'm just a quitter, you know, just keep pressed forward. That's the best way I could say it. Now, I'm obviously, if there's a reason to quit, like you have, like, work is just too crazy or something, like don't sacrifice your life for that. But
yeah. TGV Monster for 10 real bucks. What movie has changed as you grew older? Mrs. Doubtfire, I would think Sally stopped being mean to Robin. He just wants to throw a nice party with a petting zoo. Now I'm like, yeah, you're right, Sally. This is bullshit.
Probably Forrest Gump. Like, Jenny is the fucking antagonist of that movie.
Yeah, I agree with that one.
I did not pick up on it as a kid watching that. I was like, oh man, it's like, I wish they could be together. And like, now I watch it and like, you're a selfish bitch. Like, you don't deserve to have Forrest Gump.
That's probably the best answer.
Yeah.
Anybody else got one?
No, I think that covers it.
Not off the top of my head, but Forrest Gump's a good one. Pandemona 01 for what was that one again? Yeah, for 5,000 unknown currency. Watching old videos from VGA's awards when Ezio, Connor, and Edward won the statue with their own speeches. Good times, long gone. Could you show some of them, please, for nostalgia? Rest in peace, Ubisoft.
It's Chilean pesos.
Oh,
we're very international today.
Hell yeah.
I don't know. So what, did they have the characters give the speeches? Is that what happened?
If I recall correctly, yeah, they had them on like the screen or something like that.
Like, who would you get to do that these days? Like K-Vess? She can, and she's not going to fucking win an award, so no, never mind.
Biggest chin in video gaming.
The films that have changed for me in retrospect are now the Lord of the Rings, because I used to think that the orcs were just these malign, horrible, evil creatures, but now I have swept with sympathy and empathy for them. They're just trying to do their job. They've got families to go back to. They've got responsibilities to take care of, and Legolas is just like indiscriminately shooting them and counting up the tally. It seems mean and spirited now and vicious.
Frodo committed genocide. I mean, he's the villain of the Lord of the Rings now. He killed them all.
He is, yeah. Orc lives matter, man.
Zeddy Boy for $4.99. Have you guys checked out the Killers game? I liked it. In particular, Drinker, I think you'd get a kick out of the Scottish Assassin Brothers.
Nice.
Yeah,
Scottish people are always in favor of murdering people, so yeah.
It's on my to-do list is to see that movie as well.
I'll look up this.
Drew McIntyre's in it. Jan L for 10 currency. I don't know as well.
Polish
I want to say it's Polish Lottie, which is always confusing because there's no N in Zloty, but you know, there we go.
Drunkler. How often do you change your room layout?
Not at all now. I finally settled into a groove. Like, I haven't changed it. Like, I've literally just pointed my camera in a slightly different direction.
I was going to say that you've mastered angles.
Yeah, I've got this lovely display shelf of things in the background, curios, you might say. Like, the top shelf is all Resident Evil stuff, so I just want to show that off a little bit.
Yeah, I think this is my favorite currency of all time now.
The Ron.
0 for 25 Ron. Another notch on Kurtzman's belt. Doctor Who at least knew what was coming and sunsetted itself.
I wonder what Ron is.
I'm not entirely sure what that's in reference to, because Kurtzman presumably has a lot of notches on his belt. Well, in terms of shit productions, not anything else.
Shit.
But
Romanian Lou. Romanian Lou.
Clarice, anyone?
Back to dollars. Okay, good. I don't got to look up another currency.
Thank God. I know that one. TJ Jordan for $5 Anyone a fan of the show 24? Just finished season 1 and currently into season 2. Loving it. But should I finish the whole show or stop at a certain season?
I loved it in the 2000s. Yeah, it was a great bit of show. I would say, like, it's not like you need to finish at a certain point, but just be aware that it's like gradually diminishing returns, I suppose, as the show goes on. And it's just purely a case that they've ran out of stuff to do. Like, they've essentially covered every terrorist threat, from like nukes to biological weapons to bombs, like whatever. Like, they've done everything, and by the end they were just like going over the same ground. So yeah, the first probably 3 or 4 seasons are the best, I would say. Season 2 I remember being really good.
I don't even remember which season was which at this point, but yeah, I agree with you 100% that eventually the novelty of the 24-hour clock wears off on you as well. It's like, okay, you know, it's just,
And again, it's such a weird relic of a different era of filmmaking, or TV at least. Like, the idea of a 24 episode season. Now we're lucky if we get 8.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just
how would they even do it
different
now?
world, man.
It'd have to be like 3 seasons worth of show.
Yeah, the concept just wouldn't work.
Ellie and Kat for $20. Thank you. First of all, thanks for generating some entertainment from this crap. I feel like music and movies and everything is being dumbed down to make it easier to be replaced by AI. Thoughts on that?
Probably has been already.
Yeah, I think there was a huge thing that was revealed last week. This guy had AI generate a ton of music and then had bots listen to it and made millions of dollars off it.
Yeah.
He generated the music from AI and then generated the bots to listen to the music. And
wow.
It's just reinforcing that dead internet theory, really, isn't it?
I mean, that kind of happened to my stream yesterday. It was
it was like 20,000 people on X watching it or some crazy
yeah, I was
shit.
like, this doesn't. It was 26,000 people. I was like, I don't have any way that is accurate.
Yeah.
Archangel for $20. Thank you. The operative from Serenity had 13 minutes of screen time. Compare what Whedon did in those 13 minutes to all these lunch boxes in the show. Resume Rings of Power.
Don't spoil Serenity for me. I'm watching Firefly at the moment.
Oh, yeah, you'll like it. I think you'll like it. It's pretty solid.
Serenity
Yeah,
is a little weird
Loving
though.
Firefly,
They try to cram like what was going to be the next season or 2 into a movie, so it runs very quickly.
It's basically Farscape: The Peacekeeper Wars, but like in movie form. So yeah, I can get it. It's a shame that Firefly never got a second season.
The Mad Capper for $5. If I had a fucking nickel for every time I heard Waylon Bocephus for 2.
Bocephus, that's why.
Is it Bocephus?
It's Waylon Bocephus.
I always said Bocephus.
Yeah,
and I was corrected on your behalf, Drinker.
Oh, okay.
Well.
Someone said in chat as well, Drinker, move my chair. I want to see the doggos, but they're not here at the moment. They're in the living room. So like they go where they feel they're needed.
The doggos are
apparently they're not needed here.
John Gates for $5. Like waterfall of shit, it shall descend in ratings while retaining its stench. For just as a drunken Scotsman avoids arrest, it avoids cancellation.
That is a strong one.
That's pretty good.
Gummy pancakes. What the fuck?
That's Swedish Corona, by the way.
For 100 Coronas.
Gummy pancakes are a delicacy in Sweden, I hear.
They go down smooth, apparently.
Oh, Jesus Christ. They have access to all the appendices, including those in the Silmarillion. However, none of the main works of Silmarillion, Unfinished Tales, or extended works, i.e. Huron, Fall of Numenor, Gondolin, etc.
I wasn't even sure they had the appendices for the Silmarillion. I thought it was just the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I thought so too.
God, imagine that. Like
So many
that's
conflicting
that's
things
all
about
you have to work with. The appendices.
And you're spending, what is it, 250 million? I think they spent on the rights, and they're spending the rights to do a show set in the Second Age. But they thought, we won't buy the material for the age we're covering. We'll buy the stuff that people are already familiar with, and then we'll make do.
Holy shit, man! If I was Simon Tolkien, I would sell them the appendices a page at a time. Like, you want the next page? Well, that's gonna be another $10 million.
That
Dante,
is Danish krona, by the way.
gotcha. Dante Gray 1 for 50 Danish coronas. Had wokeism not happened, we would have fantasy films that looked like hot Frank Frazetta illustrations by now.
I've got some hope for Red Sonja. Just saying,
Yeah,
I've seen
that
I've
actually
seen the
looks pretty
shots from it. Whether that's just like some crazy dream sequence, and then the next time you see her, she's in like full plate armor, like head to toe. I don't know, but it's on the right track so far.
Kevin O'Neill for $2. Ripley and Hicks 2024. It's the only way to be sure.
They just nuke the entire site, though.
Yeah,
it's not a good solution to the world's problems.
JK for $20. Thank you. It's actually not about the DEI aspect. It's about greed toward market share. Disney is incensed that middle-aged women aren't watching Disney Plus, so they're masking their attempt to capture their attention with DEI and feminism.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off.
Mark Faraday for $1.99. Who's more of a critical drinker or Platoon?
Well, I think the only way to settle this is that we get ourselves to a cocktail bar one evening and just see who walks out at the end.
Oh yeah, live stream drinking competition. That could only go well.
Okay.
John Gates for $5. Recast Sydney Sweeney as the apprentice and Salma Hayek as the teacher witch. She has to teach her all sorts of things about bewitching people.
I'm fully in favor of this plan.
Yeah.
I was hoping to get to that one very soon.
Pygmy Splints for $2. Y'all gonna be playing Space Marine 2 Dominus Nox.
Hey, I'm streaming it already, so I've been enjoying it so far. Good game. Very gory.
I don't have any time. Like, I keep buying these games that when they come out and think, oh, that'll be good, I might stream that. I don't have time. I don't have time to play them. I've had Outlaws sitting in my fucking library for about a month, and it's just sitting there unplayed. Now it turns out that was probably the best possible outcome, but yeah.
Buy it through Steam?
Well, this is the problem when you're producing like 3-hour-long videos every like 2 days. You have to take a break occasionally, do some other stuff.
Did you buy it through Steam? Because if you have like literally 0 hours logged into it, you can still get a refund for it.
No, I think it was Epic Games. I'll play it one day.
The Internet Help Desk member for 2 months. 2 girls, 1 BSUP.
Okay.
Drinker, if you're live streaming while you're gaming, are there weird disassociative moments where you're really kind of into the game, and then suddenly you realize, oh, there's like 1,000 people watching?
It's more like because like people would expect you to maintain a stream of chatter and like observations about the game, or just like being in entertainment mode, I suppose, because that's kind of why they're there. But there's times when you're going to be in like quite an intense sequence of the game where you really just need to pay attention to what you're doing, and like I can't multitask like that, so I tend to just fall silent. And then after several minutes, I'm aware like, oh, I haven't actually spoken a single word this whole time. But it's the nature of the game. Some games are slower and like you can just pass commentary as you go. It just depends on what you're playing. So you got to take the rough with the smooth, I suppose. I think generally people understand like sometimes when you're gaming, you kind of just have to pay attention to what you're doing and get through a tough section.
Istari Azul for $1.99. Snarky J is basically an upgraded Aubrey. Aubrey's one of a kind.
I mean, I can see where people would assume that.
Yeah, Snarky's good fun. She's got some good observations, and she's quite fun to have on a live stream.
And she does look a little bit like Aubrey Plaza. Like a
little bit, yeah.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Vimorain for 10, I forget currencies.
Yeah,
I know Americans, America's currency. I know that one.
It's getting annoying. It should just convert it.
That's the
Swiss franc again.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
Congenital heart failure. 10 of those. Oh, I hope you will watch and talk about Terrifier 1 and 2 and the upcoming 3. That is true return to form of slasher horror. I highly recommend previous 2 before a third one comes out, please. Yeah, I do too. Terrifier 1 and 2. If you're a slasher fan, if you are a slasher fan, you've probably seen those movies already. But if you are and haven't, please do. They are extremely gory and intense and awesome as fuck.
What do you guys think about this new spate or trend or aesthetic for horror films that are kind of tongue in cheek, and they all sit in a kind of B- to B+ range, like Abigail or Barbarian or Long Legs, those films?
I liked Barbarian quite a bit. It's A24. Yeah, it's like they're creating this whole new aesthetic for horror films right now. Horror is a genre that goes through it goes through trends like no other that I can think of. And yeah, that's like the current one. The look, the aesthetic, it's all very similar, but I'm not complaining with some of the movies that they're pumping out. Like it feels like a revitalized genre right now. So
I think most horror movies don't really have pretensions to be in like high art that have a lot to say about the human condition or whatever anyway. So I think it probably fits quite neatly into that aesthetic of just delivering the shocks, the scares, the gore, the jump scares, whatever, and then moving on. It's like a roller coaster ride, basically.
It's not quite fitting for me, though, like the idea of horror and its tropes, but with a kind of facetiousness to it as well. It's not quite working for me, this new kind of aesthetic.
Is it the self-referential stuff? As in, like,
Yeah.
like that knowing, because it knows it's a horror film, and so it knowingly deploys the tropes that it's seen in horror films with a kind of studied remove, I guess.
But there's
always
also the
wondered-
undercurrent, kind of facetiousness and kind of self-awareness, and it doesn't quite gel. I don't know.
I've not seen enough of them recently, but my impression with a lot of things, because you have that sort of meta self-awareness in so many different genres at the moment, and like a lot of the time it comes through when the people creating it, I don't think, have any ideas for a new place to take it, and they're quite aware they don't have very many ideas for where to take it, and so they think, well, if we can just knowingly say we're doing it because nudge nudge wink wink, we're doing it, it's kind of it's a way of avoiding having to create a brand new thing that you're invested in, because if that bombs, then you suffer that huge ego shock of, shit, my great new idea was actually really crap. Whereas now they can say, yeah, look, we're doing the thing. Don't you like the thing? We like the thing too. That's why we're doing
it. TJ Jordan for $5. Even if Marvel is very serious about changing course, which is already hard to believe, they're still owned by Disney. I can't see how they can. It's as far as I'm concerned, what they're doing right now is they're hitting the pause button essentially, because they're just going to bring in all the nostalgia stuff to keep us around for another 3-4 years.
Yeah, and I think you have a certain degree of leverage as well when you're able to say, hey, we were able to shart out billion-dollar movies on like a bi-yearly basis. That was like the benchmark at a certain point. Like every movie we were making towards the end was hitting over $1 billion. And so the insane amounts of revenue we can generate for our parent company allows us to say, we need to get back to that. I don't think Star Wars has that kind of leverage because, they were never particularly successful. But with the MCU, they absolutely were. So I think that gives them at least the ability to say, like, we need to change things because what we are doing now is killing our profits. We can't keep doing that.
This is gonna be my last one, and I have to head out to go teach people to choke each other. Yeah, this has become Garrett. Can I read it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Gareth Davies for 10 fake monies. We'll go with that, right? Transformers 84 was excellent, but the most brutal way to do a toy line rehash ever. It was also, the movie was one of the most brutal ways to try and reset your toy line ever. They got so many complaints from parents.
Didn't they
when
kill
they
off
killed
Optimus Prime?
Yes, and they
Yeah, it
got
was
so many
powerful.
letters.
Damn.
They got so many letters from people that they ended up having to revive him because it was like they were like, you ruined my child's life.
They also had to redo the G.I. Joe movie that they were working on at the time because they were supposed to kill off Duke. Because again, they wanted to get rid of the toy because it wasn't selling particularly well. but because there was such a backlash to the Transformers movie, they had to insert like this really crap bit of ADR, like right at the end, like, Duke woke up from his coma, so everything's fine now. Woo! You know?
Well, I gotta head out, guys. Hopefully, in the very near future, I don't need to do this anymore, but I do need to go teach a class. So.
Fair enough, Dark Hour. Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Before you go, what subs are you on? How far? How
Let me
close?
see. I'll
Must
check on
be
my phone.
close now.
We are at 99.14. So by the time I
86
drive
more.
over, hopefully, come on, guys, let's do it.
Fingers crossed.
You can do this.
Teaching jujitsu in New Jersey. I'm just picturing like 20 pint-sized Marky Marks. That you have to.
Basically, yeah. So that is what it. I'm 6'1", so I'm usually one of the bigger guys in the class. So, but thank you, and I will see you all very soon.
And see you,
See
Dark
you
Hour.
later.
Bye.
Thanks, man.
Stephen Delian for $5 or De Leon. Do you know why a ship floats and a stone cannot? Because the stone sees only downward. The darkness of the water is vast and irresistible.
Oh my god, so powerful.
Mm-mm.
I feel like I'm learning as we go.
Tay for $5. Hey, Cynic Platoon, I really want those Funko Pops and a plushie from Platoon. They would make nice gifts for Christmas. Oh, you mean this that I have to mail to Platoon? Right now? Uh-huh. Mine's in the shelf back there, but I still got to send yours out.
Yeah, not commercially available, I don't think, are they? But maybe
No,
one day.
I had to have those custom made.
You must be able to get plushies going. I think you could do a run of them quite easily. Give them a little wine glass in one hand.
Indeed.
You do
I
well.
always said like, I would want to do it, but only if I could actually have it like with a small real bottle of wine and a real cigarette, but it wouldn't get through customs anywhere. So
No.
yeah, probably not. But a plushie would be fun.
And ran out of channel names for $2. Hot dogs aren't sandwiches, they're tacos. See, this is the great debate.
Heresy.
Great debate. Ian So Forth gifted 10 Little Platoon memberships.
Thank you.
And TVG Monster gifted 1 Little Platoon membership.
Did he gift it to himself?
He might have.
One way or the other, thank you. That was either very generous or very self-serving of you.
Boosh Cash, I believe, sent in a super sticker for $1.99. Can't see what it is, but thank you, sir. Or madam. Rolando A. Ramirez for 10 real bucks. Drinker, sorry, but how can a woman take multiple body shots to the ribs from a Terminator? Does she have cyber enhancements?
Yeah, this goes back to what I was saying earlier about there's a degree of plot armor in this show that's the scene where it definitely goes into overdrive. She should not have survived that. I think they could have redone that in a different way that would have made it work. So yeah, I get what you're saying there.
Isn't it a shame that we kind of have to sort of psychologically brace ourselves or be at a remove for a little bit until we suss out whether or not characters are going to be turned into girl bosses or things like that? And I don't know, there's kind of like this little membrane we have there now.
It is sad, and unfortunately, it's just the state of modern entertainment. You know, when you get burned so many times, well, you stop putting your hand on the pot, I suppose, and I guess that's where we're at with Western entertainment. So it's easier to assume that they're going to be a girl boss and completely unlikable, and then be pleasantly surprised when they're not.
Nevsky for $6 fake bucks. Are they really going to push for 5 seasons of Rings of Power, or do they give up and cut their losses?
I think I read that season 3's been officially, it's renewed for 3, isn't it, at least? I can see them carrying it on. It's so much money has been invested, so much reputation's been invested. There'll be the contractual obligation to do a certain amount with it. It will be a tremendous admission of failure if they cancelled it. They might scale down production costs and things like that. It'd be really funny if it turns out by the time of season 5, it looks like some old Soviet Union produced piece of crap, but really dodgy wigs.
Yeah, well, we're there already, I think. But yeah, I think with something like Amazon, like if it was any other studio, I would say, yeah, it's not commercially viable. With them, like punting $1 billion into a show is like chump change for them. Like the insane amounts of money they make from their online retail business, like more than compensates for them. So they could afford to make dozens of seasons of Rings of Power if they really wanted to.
So strange.
probably
Like you
should.
think that, you know, the profit drive as a driver of quality isn't here in this instance because they have such a vast resource base to back on. So it's very surreal. And I also wonder how much of that $1 billion is invested up front. And so if they did another couple of 2 or 3 seasons, it wouldn't be that much of a cost relative to the vast investment they made establishing and setting everything up.
Yeah, I mean, the initial investment for costumes, set design, that sort of thing, you're going to keep reusing the same sets like season after season to some extent and the same costumes. So
why
that
didn't
makes
they
it
get some
easier.
big stars for this show? It's always kind of bugged me. If you got that endless budget, why are there some
real
rather
pedigree there.
professionals of the English stage? You know,
I
Strange.
honestly don't know. Maybe they figured it would be easier to identify with the characters if they weren't a known actor. Not sure.
Quiet Texan for $10. Regarding female protagonists, Lollipop Chainsaw Repop is a good remaster, despite no OG soundtrack. A 7 out of 10 in 2012 and a 9 out of 10 right now. We live in a society.
Lollipop Chainsaw. So, yeah, nice little blast from the past.
What would this be? LCPL anime guy.
Lance
someone told
Corporal,
me-
I think we established this last
Someone
time.
told me that last time, but I didn't remember. It was shocker. For $5 for Lil Platoon, how would you make a Gundam Transformer crossover? And are any of you guys going to see Transformers 1? Seems interesting to me to go see it.
I think Dark Hour has seen Transformers 1, but sadly he gave us his opinion earlier. So I'd scroll back.
Not a great movie.
In terms of crossovers, just have all of the Gundams just murder all of the Transformers as quickly and efficiently as possible, and then we can get some good storytelling going.
there was one Transformers film that I did like because the writers had obviously just not given a shit and were just entertaining themselves because it got to the point that they had Sir Anthony Hopkins and there's all the stuff about the Knights of the Round Table back in
Yeah.
history. It got so farcical that I actually enjoyed it. I could enjoy the super hyper campness of it.
Our boy Melvin Deeply for $5. Is writing really the biggest issue in films, or is it the box ticking and messaging? Deadpool and Romulus had absolute shit writing, but made money.
Well, I think the two go hand in hand in a lot of cases. The more you try to incorporate your messaging into the story, the better you have to be as a writer to make it actually work. And well, most of the time they're not, and so it drags the story down anyway.
Yeah,
I
the
think
box
art,
ticking and messaging is more detrimental at the box office, I think, than the
Yeah.
shit writing.
I think Deadpool and Wolverine and Spider-Man No Way Home are prime examples of a couple films that they have a lot of issues with their plot, but the heart is there. They care about their characters. You can tell it's made by people that love the IP as much as the people who want to go see it. And that goes a really long way.
I think as well, like people perhaps underestimate the kind of hidden impact of the message on movies and stuff. Like it's fine for people, I guess, like me or whatever, like YouTube commentators to call it out and complain about it and point out how it ruins storytelling. But like the average consumer, I think they assume is either oblivious to it or doesn't care about it. I think probably the truth is that they're aware on it. They're aware of it on a more subconscious level. And they just get to that point where they feel like this movie doesn't make me feel good. I don't enjoy watching this. I can't quite pin down what's wrong with it. I just don't want to see other films like this. And that's how they quietly check out rather than making a big song and dance about like, oh, this is woke or whatever, or tries to push a political agenda. It's more just, nah, I'm not feeling it. This is a bit shit. And I think that that has started to bite more and more in a way that they couldn't have predicted.
Yeah. I also want to add for Melvin Deeply that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is an outstanding film, a great late career resurgence for Quentin Tarantino, and probably the second best in his filmography.
Melvin absolutely hates that fucking movie. God. I think every stream Melvin lets us know that he hates that movie. Non grata for 100 currencies. I'm sure someone's told me what it is. Shogun got 18 Emmys. Maybe there's hope for the awards. Comments?
Yeah. I mean, even a broken clock is right twice a day, I suppose. Like, eventually they'll get some good things in there, but...
Didn't Ahsoka
the-
also get some Emmys, though? It was like all costume stuff, but like,
Yeah.
they're not completely redeemed. Shogun sounds like it was a worthy winner, though. I did see, did I finish that? I think I finished Shogun. It was good. Whatever I saw of it seemed good, though.
I enjoyed it. Yeah, good show.
This one's for you, Platoon.
Ran out of channel names for $5. Little Platoon, you don't understand. Sauron being killed by his hat is a reference to Gothmog, Lord of Balrogs. It's like poetry. It rhymes. Yeah, it's a really shit rhyme though, isn't it? It's like, it's not a good poem.
Just a few more here. John Gates for $2. Get Astrobot, best game I played in years.
I do have it ready to go. Because when I got the PS5, like it came with Astro's Playroom, and I just had a little go in it, and I was like, this is actually a really neat little game. I quite like it. Like the mechanics are all really well established. It's a fun platformer, and I thought, oh, I'll get Astrobot just to try it. I haven't really got into it yet though.
I still play Call of Duty Warzone. I'm not getting there.
I'm not a gamer, but from the outside perspective, it's really strange to watch what's been going on just in the last month with Dustborn, Outlaws, and what was the other one?
Concord?
Concord.
Yeah, Concord.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. And Dustborn was the strangest. I was trying to catch up with what the hell was going on. Some sort of Scandinavian company had created it and then shipped it into the American market. It's very bizarre stuff.
We're living in strange times with video games. Like at the moment, I've got this weird mix going on of Space Marine 2 and Alan Wake remastered. So, yeah, I'm kind of like bridging past and present at the moment. But yeah, I've been quite enjoying both of them.
Sort of convergence between film and game in terms of, games have become significantly more cinematic to the point that one of the big criticisms you hear of a lot of modern games is that they are just films with occasional interactive elements, or it's like you're like on a walkway just between these various different cinematic set pieces, and that affords a huge number of more opportunities for all of the worst aspects of film writing to take hold in games as well, in the way that like a simple platformer like Astrobot sounds like it is. There's no option for that. It's just a game which is designed to be mechanically really enjoyable, and it doesn't cost a huge amount of money by comparison. You don't need to get A-list stars. You don't need to do mocap or all this really expensive stuff. And there's not an opportunity for really bad writers to turn up and say, hey, how about we make racism like a superhero power, or whatever Dustborn did. So, yeah, simple games are fun. I like simple games.
Nicholas Cowling for a currency I definitely don't fucking know, but there's 20,000 of them. Thoughts on the downfall of Hollywood masculinity and the rise of wokeism? Would be where we are now without, where would we be right now without Me Too, Time's Up, and all that bullshit?
I mean, I think all that stuff factored into it, I suppose. It was probably a reflection of a general societal trend away from masculinity and traditional male rugged heroes towards something a bit more, what's the word? Sensitive? Is that where I should go with this? Yeah, let's go with that. Partly, a new generation of writers who haven't really experienced the kind of, I guess, tough upbringing and the tough life experiences that mold you into a more rounded person who can write tough guy characters. And so you write weak, neurotic, overly verbose characters who just who can't really relate to each other the way men normally do. That's just a reflection of the writers and the culture of Hollywood and the culture at large, I suppose, as we move from generation to generation.
And
I think there's a confusion with the movement from almost like a divesting of what would be considered traditional masculinity towards what would be a more receptive emotional openness seems to be the mentality or the mindset, rather than the idea of the typical Aragorn character who might start off diffident or uncertain of themselves, who then work towards becoming a more fully realized, being able to comport themselves with a kind of masculine dignity. So it's losing that latter one and getting more to this former idea, which is more of a divesting of masculinity as almost a positive thing in order to get a more fully realized authentic thing, rather than a socially constructed masculinity, which could be negative. So that's,
I think as well, that like there's this and it's been here for a while, like this postmodern trend that everything has to be deconstructed, and everything that traditionally has been done in storytelling is now old and tired and played out, and we have to construct a new version of it. And the way we do that is just to sort of gradually tear down the things that were done before, mock them, belittle them, make out that they were never that impressive in the first place, so that we can supplant them with our own new scheme of what storytelling should be. And the point where they fall, like with this, is really at that final hurdle, because what they try to replace it with is garbage, by and large, and that's why no one's accepted it, and that's why it keeps failing.
Also, like if the model of your writer's room, you can kind of tie Me Too into it, I think, but it's kind of seen as being a bad or a dangerous or now a reputational risk if you are like a mad genius in Hollywood or even in video games. That's putting you in much more danger since Me Too, I think. Like the kind of people who can write brilliant but objectionable characters are quite often brilliant but objectionable people. And there's not a huge amount of space anymore, I think, for that sort of double-edged sword. Like you are going to lose the brilliance if you get rid of the undeniably objectionable people who did once predominate in Hollywood. If you move from that to a kind of very safety-oriented consensus culture where lots of people get together in a room and they all really like each other, or at least pretend to, and their entire like frame of reference is like, how can we come to a consensus? You're probably going to get really boring consensus-driven characters, and that's not a particularly masculine trait or trope. It doesn't really like give you massively like dynamic male archetypes if your creative process is just let's all be nice, because we tried the being mean thing once and then Harvey Weinstein happened.
Yeah, agreeability is not like a high priority for most men.
Like in terms of creativity, the thing that we would abhor and detest that would make our toes curl is being in a room where there's like a convivial atmosphere that's kind of uplifting and positive. That's death for creativity. We want to go to our man cave and work on stuff and tailor it away. That's
well, I think the best creativity, I think, is born out of conflict. Like you get conflicting ideas, and the ones which are ultimately the best are the ones that will prevail generally, and that's how you get the best possible outcome for your story. And if you don't have that atmosphere of conflict and everyone's just kind of going along with every idea because they don't want to offend anyone, well, you're going to get mediocre ideas because the best stuff doesn't get a chance to rise to the top.
Yeah, if there's a whiteboard and it's got like a diversity, dinosaurs, and little hearts things written on them, then I'm walking out of that room.
Stu Cheeks for $10. Thoughts on the movie Funny Games from 2007?
I have none.
I have not seen it.
Not even heard of it.
I would like a meta film. It would never get made, of course, where it's actually in a writer's room. We have people who are more conservative versus the new breed of Hollywood people arguing and having constant tensions, and their tensions being sort of replicated or brought to life in vignettes and scenes that constantly change and morph relative to the arguments in the writer's room. That'd be quite a good modern film, but it would never happen.
I'm envisioning this sort of weird Ballardian thing where like all the writers are in the room and they're trying so hard to be nice to each other that they end up killing each other out of intolerance for the intolerant. It's just...
I was going to say before I move on to the next super chat, Dark Hour is only 53 subs away from his 10K. Everybody,
ooh,
yeah, 53.
Taker 610 for $2. If an Ent starts an insurrection, is it treason?
Absolutely.
Arrest that man.
Arrest this man. Southeastern Kaiju for $5. Firefly fans, brown coats, work to bring Serenity into existence. If the Acolyte fans exist, they should have no problem getting their own movie.
Well, they do exist, just not in very large numbers, sadly. So we'll probably never get it.
Okay, now just a couple more because a couple more came in. Sport Nugget for $5. So Uru gave us mortality as a gift, but he'll punish us with death if we disobey him. I just don't know. The Sauron guy makes a lot more sense.
Fair enough.
Nevsky for 10 fake bucks. Which movie would you take to safety? As in, no company or person could touch the lore, etc. Blade Runner for him.
Back to the Future. It's the
E.T.
only unspoiled franchise.
E.T. The original Halloween.
Oh, but they've already fucked that, haven't they?
I know. That's what I'm saying. I want to take it back. Stop it.
If we're allowed to take things back, then I'm just going to say in Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, I guess. But
yeah, if it's stuff that hasn't been touched yet, but we can preserve. I want to save Big Trouble in Little China. The Rock can stay the fuck away from that movie.
Damn, I can't. I don't know. They've ruined so many things I already love. I don't know. Pluto is a star. Send in a $5 sticker. Thank you much.
Thank you.
And the last one is from Stitch, member for 8 months. A very fine BSUP this evening. Thank you, gents. And thank you.
Much obliged.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is it for the super chats. That's also it for the stream, but we will ask our guests and thank our guests for coming on and ask you guys, Drinker, what are you going to be up to next?
I'm going to be in November. I'm going to be at Grand Rapids Comic Con. Just for anyone who might be interested, who wants to come along and meet me and like buy merch or whatever it is we do at these things. So yeah, that is going to be mid-November, I think, at Grand Rapids. So you can look up the Comic Con pretty easily and get your tickets there. So catch me there.
Yeah, and thanks so much for coming on, man. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
No, it's a pleasure. It's always nice to hang with you guys.
And Echo Chamberlain, also thanks to you for coming on as well, becoming a regular. And where can we find you next, sir? What are you up to?
The Echo Chamberlain live stream is taking a break tomorrow, so it'll probably be next week, depending on how it fits in with Master Nayat's routine. I have an AI Tolkien giving his takes on the Rings of Power, if anyone wants to watch that. I put a lot of work into it, and I think it's really good. The algorithm has had second thoughts, but so check that out. Yeah, and then otherwise I'm going to do another Rings of Power video, which would be kind of a compare and contrast with why Rings of Power fails relative to the films. So keep an eye out for that too. But always great to hang. Like, you guys are getting some big numbers now. BSUP's like a kind of a big deal now.
Drinker kind of brings a crowd with him too. So, you know.
Oh, it's mostly you guys. But yeah, I'm glad you got some good audience tonight.
And my co-host, Lil Platoon, what are you doing, man? What are you up to?
Same thing as I do every day, Pinky. I'm gonna
take
go
over the
and-
world, sir.
Yeah, try and take over the world with my massive Rings of Power video. Yeah, straight back to the editing bay after this, and
Yes, sir.
still hoping that will be out next weekend. We will see how the copyright system likes it, though.
And I'm doing an Agatha video when that comes out in a couple days. That'll probably see the light of day on Monday-ish before BSUP, I hope. And I'm mailing this to Little Platoon.
Yay.
Yeah. But that is it for the stream, everyone. Thank you so much for everyone who stuck around. Thank you, everyone in the chat. Thank you, everyone who sends in the super chats. We appreciate you all. You all fucking rule. And we will see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.